episode 128 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen.
And Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. So join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So we're continuing with our Assassin's Blade stories. So this week we're doing the Assassin and the Underworld. So basically it just starts off where the other one ended. Selena gets back from the desert and she goes to see Arabin, and Arabin's like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And she's like, oh, I guess that's fine.
And then he's like, here's some jewelry. And she's like, oh my god, he knows me so well.
Yeah, and, like, I guess it's hard, too, because, like, he is a father figure, but you're like, he's so textbook manipulative and, abusive. Sorry. But, like, the emotional and physical, well, obviously physical as well. He beat the shit out of her last time. But anyway, and then he says he has another gift. There is a Donoval coming from Melisande, and he is...
apparently a piece of shit.
Yeah, he's gonna start a road so that there's more slaves around, and it's gonna be real bad. And she's like, oh, Arabin has changed since he wanted to buy 200 slaves / 100 slaves. So clearly this is a, like, nice thing he's doing.
Yes. Yes, the whole thing is, like, obviously we know that Melisande is under the control of Aelin. So essentially, the Queen of Melisande sent, like, this guy, Donoval, and his wife, I think?
His ex-wife.
Ex-wife?
Yeah.
Oh,
I guess
okay.
They're allowed to divorce.
So, sent them both to Aelin to petition the king to create a road. And so Arabin has told Selena that Donoval wants to use this road to create a slave trade, but they've been hired by his ex-wife to assassinate him because she is anti-slavery.
And that's why she left him, so she's a great role model for Selena.
Yeah, so...
best friends.
Yeah, so essentially, like, this story is when we get most of, like, the animosity between her and Lysandra, like,
which I love.
Yeah, so when we read Queen of Shadows, there's a lot of reference to Lysandra and Aelin's or Selena's relationship and how, like, tumultuous it was and how they hated each other's guts, and, like, we get a lot of it here. So, like, Lysandra tries to, like, sort of shove her friendship with Sam in Selena's face and make her jealous, and, like, Sam's like, she's really not so bad alone, and, like, she also is really manipulative about, like, being like, Arabin's doing all of this for me, to try and be like, look how much he cares about me as opposed to you. Like, it's like they are very textbook rivals.
Yeah. Right. I kind of love it. Rivals to besties,
yeah. And then I really appreciate, too, so, like, she actually does go, there's another sort of call forward callback. I think it is also in Queen of Shadows, when she gets stuck in the sewer, and there's a callback to her being like, I was stuck in the sewer before.
Yeah.
So she actually gets stuck in the sewer again. She tries to sneak into Donoval's house and get some intel, but his guards catch her and shove her in a sewer.
A terrifying scene. Like, it's one of the worst imaginable things you can think of, because they're, like, flushing out the sewers, so they're filling them up so all the trash will flood in the streets. So she's stuck in the sewer, and there's just water is rising and rising, and you're like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you're slowly you're gonna drown, like there's nowhere else to go. Sam's on like the other side of this grate, and he's like trying to open it, and he can't, and she's like, sorry.
She's like, she like gives up and assumes she's gonna die.
Yeah.
Like she takes her last breath and is still under there. Obviously she's gonna think she's gonna die.
Yeah.
But it's like still terrifying.
And he's like, don't you dare. Don't do this. Like, don't you give up on me. So, like, he's making it really apparent how he feels.
Even though she still doesn't get it till he spells it out.
No, and it's funny because this whole story, like, this whole little, like, assassin in the underworld, there's this underlying, like, I almost want to say animosity between her and Sam on her end. Yeah.
Well, she thinks that he's been here, like, fawning over Lysandra, and she's jealous.
Yeah.
Is part of most of it, really. She's just like, he didn't even miss me. He didn't even care I was gone.
Yeah, so she was gone for, like, 3 months, and she thought he was having this great time bringing Lysandra around to picnics and, like, escorting her and Clarice, who is, like, Lysandra's former madam, like, escorting them around and, like, living his best life in Rifthold. Meanwhile, she was off in some, like, sweaty desert, like, being
punished.
Yeah, being threatened with her life and, like, having to work out every day and just, like, being miserable. So she's like, dude.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
But all of it is actually because Arabin was like, you can only have shitty jobs. No good jobs for you. No money for you, for Sam, which is obviously not great either.
Yeah. But luckily, the silent assassin, like the silent leader guy, gave Celaena a shit ton of money. So when she comes back, she's able to pay off her debt and buy herself that little apartment that they spent all that time in.
Yeah.
So she does that. Then her and Sam finally work out their problems.
And he's like, I've loved you for years.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I would have killed him up until Skull's Bay.
Yes! It blows my mind. I don't understand.
It's so funny.
Well, it's funny because, so the whole reason they have this, like, this moment of, like, dude, girl, I'm in love with you.
Yeah.
Is because, so they're doing this job, this Donoval job, and he's like, by the way, after this job is over, I'm gonna go to Eelway. And she's like, what do you mean you're going to Eelway? And he's like, yeah, like, me and Arabin have talked about setting up an assassin's guild in Eelway, so, like, I'm gonna go there. And she's like, but you can't, it's so far away. And he's like, why wouldn't I? She's like, but you can't. Yeah. He's like, but you're always gonna choose Arabin. He was like, I literally spent summer in hell not realizing if you were okay or not, and then you just come back and everything is the same, and you're not mad at Arabin for beating you half to death.
Yeah.
Like, you just accept his gifts and move on and act like nothing happened. So, like, obviously you're always gonna choose Arabin over me. And she's like, why does that matter? And he's like, 'cause I'm in love with you. And I can't stand it if you choose him over me. And she's like, I would choose you, you idiot. And I'm like, you would?
Yeah, since when?
You haven't displayed that sort of, like, affection towards him at all.
She started kind of feeling it, I guess, in the last story when she was like, can't kiss Ilias because I want to kiss Sam. But you're still like... That's why, like, I find... I don't know if it's because of, like, life experiences or anything, but, like, I just felt like in Throne of Glass when she's like, Sam died, it hit me so much harder than in this one. I'm like, I feel like their relationship didn't progress enough for me to actually, like, I love Sam as a character.
Yeah.
But I was like, they're only together for, like, a week.
Yeah.
It feels like, and I get, like, they have their whole past together too, but they were, like, enemies, and he loved her the whole time, and I feel like there's probably a lot of guilt there. But I was just like, I expected the story of their love to be so much bigger.
Yes, because, like, not that, I don't want to sound like a bitch, but it's not that in Throne of Glass, the way she portrays her grief makes it seem like this was like the love of her life and, you know, the one person that understood her, and they had a love that was so deep and true and unending that she would never recover from it. And we watch her journey of healing through the book and through all of the books, really.
Yeah. And
reading about the actual relationship, it doesn't feel as unending, soul-shattering. Like, it doesn't get there in the actual narrative of the romance itself.
Yeah, it kind of honestly takes away some of the depth of her grief in the Throne of Glass series for me. And like, but I do understand, and I obviously empathize and know that it's obviously a lot of grief and really hard when, especially, they did decide basically that it was forever and they had made plans of what they were going to do. Like, I get it, but I did expect it to be more of a, like, they had been together for years and he died. Like, I don't know, it just seemed so abrupt. All of this happens in, like, the span of, like, one summer.
Yeah.
And 3 months of it is her in the desert.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also feel like you can tell that Sarah J Maas was younger when she wrote it, which is fine.
But was she younger when she wrote Assassin's Blade, or did she write...
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Because I think they were written when... I think they were written around the same time as Throne of Glass. It's just she didn't actually publish them until after.
Oh, okay.
In, like, the one book. But yeah, so it's... Yeah, there's a lot to it, I guess. One fun thing about this story, though, and I think it was foreshadowing for Sarah J Maas's original plan, is she goes to a party.
Oh, yes.
And, Dorian and Kael show up, and they're, like, masked, and she doesn't know who they are, but Dorian comes over and dances with her, and, like...
They have a moment.
It's a really big moment, and I feel like I've heard before that originally when she wrote Throne of Glass, she was going to, like, put Celaena and Dorian together.
Yes.
I don't know if it's true. Obviously, how would we ever know? But apparently that's a thing. And, like, you can kind of see it with the foreshadowing of him being in this story.
Yeah. Although we would never know.
No.
They don't name him. Like, we never find out.
No. No, you just see that there's, like, a grumpy man beside him with a sword, and you're like, that's Kael!
Yeah.
Who doesn't look like he wants to be there.
Yeah.
You're like, of course not. So, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so to finish off this story, her and Sam proclaim their love for each other. They go to do this job and kill this Donovan guy, and apparently there are paper documents that they need to prove that he was trying to, like, create a slave...
Blackmail.
Yeah, try to create a slave trade agreement with this other guy. So they do go, they kill him and the other guy, steal the document, give it to his ex-wife, and then go see Arabin and say, hey, we finished the job. And then I don't know if it's just his, like, need to tell her that he's smarter than her. He then, like, tells her to her face, like, you're an idiot, essentially. And, like, the one that was actually trying to get the slave trade going was the ex-wife. And this Donovan guy was actually trying to stop it. Good guy. And he was actually the good guy. But, of course, they made it seem like he wasn't great because at one of the parties he was, like, making out with a courtesan. So they wanted to make him seem sort of slimy, but, like, really he was the good guy all along. And
she killed him.
She killed him. And so then she's like, you're a dick.
Well, I just don't understand what his end game was, because, like, did he really expect her to forgive him for lying to her? Like,
But
like, he's punishing her for sure,
yeah.
but like, how can she trust him after this?
Well, this is what, like, I wonder if is he genuinely so obtuse in that he thinks that she will always forgive him? Like, maybe he's just that full of himself. Maybe he overestimates his grooming techniques.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Or does he just have his already? Because we're going to read in the next story, he has a plan in place. And, you know, spoiler alert, Selena ends up in Endovier. So, like, does he just not...
Spoiler alert, the first sentence of the first book. I love it, yeah.
But you know what I mean? So, like,
yeah.
Does he just not care what she thinks of him at this point? Because he already knows how it's going to end.
Yeah, and then he's going to... Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
Interesting.
Anyway,
yeah.
So she ends up selling her Asterian horse to the slave trade lady, not realizing that she was the slave trade lady.
Which is sad.
Yeah, her poor...
I love the Asterian
her poor horse. And use that money to pay off Sam's debt as well to Arabin. So now her and Sam are both free. And she's like, don't you come talking to me for a good long while because it might kill you. So leave me alone, Arabin. Yeah. And then her and Sam just like move in together.
I know. It's very abrupt. Do we find out what Arabin did with the money she spent
Yes. So he also tells her that too. He tells her that all that money that she gave him to pay off her debt, he used to bid on Lysandra's
virginity.
V card.
It's so gross.
Yeah.
And I almost want, like, I know she's a teenager and they're being pitted against each other on purpose, but I want her to realize that Lysandra is not her enemy.
I know.
I know it's not her fault she's a child, but I'm also like, oh, the poor baby.
That
like...
poor 17-year-old girl. And she had to seem, like, excited about it. Like, throughout the whole book, or story, I will say, like, all the interactions with Lysandra was her bragging about, like, her bidding ceremony. About how, like, it's gonna be super exclusive, and she's already, like, there's already rumors that she's gonna break the record for the highest price, and that, like, Arabin is giving her a luncheon to celebrate it, and, like, just making it seem like it's this really big deal. Like, almost like a prom or a wedding or something like that. But really, it is her initiation into being raped. Yay!
Yeah. It's awful. And, like, I also can't blame Selena for how she's acting by any means, but I do feel bad for both of them.
Yeah. And obviously, Selena's really, really pissed that this money that she earned saving the silent guy's master, saving his life, Arabin just tossed it aside. Just tossed it, like, you know, used it to get some girl's V card.
Yeah. It's slimy as fuck.
It is slimy as fuck. And, to be honest, I don't really understand why V cards are, like, why do you want a girl's V card so bad?
Yeah, it's a status thing, I guess. I don't get it.
Like, I don't care how much training she has. There's no way she can account for, like, same thing with guys. No one's going to be great their first time. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, like...
And, like, you would... Yeah. I just... Well, for Arabin, is it part of it the pain, too? Like, he seems like that type, you know?
I guess, yeah. Yeah. Anyway. So, that is about it for The Assassin and the Underworld. We really only have one story left.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So we'll learn what happens to Selena and Sam next week.
If you don't already know.
Well, yeah, right? It's, like, not already apparent. So we're going to get into our main story now, so just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy.
Oh, they might.
They will, actually.
wild.
Oh my god, it's like the only sauce in this entire book.
In this entire series.
Yeah.
Except for there might be some in the next book, but not much.
Yeah. So this is week 6 with our tandem read of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. And this week is actually a rare week because we are hitting a chunk of Empire of Storms. So for some reason in the tandem read, there is a significant chunk. There's a ton of action. A lot of things happen. So, it's Empire of Storms chapters 37 to 51 is one big Empire of Storms chunk. And it just lined up nicely for us.
It did. I love it. It's actually like, I think the chunk is like, Empire of Storms chapter 33, which was last week.
Yes.
And it goes to 51. So next week we do start with Tower of Dawn. But it is just, it's funny the way it lined up.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Big fan.
So, last week we ended off with, now I gotta do a recap of everybody. So, let's see if I remember. Nezrin and Sartak are in the mountains trying to figure out what's going on with the Karen Quee. They've ran into a shifter guy named Falcon, and Sartak is pissed at Nezrin because she has not told him things, and he knows she hasn't told him things, so he's mad. So they're sort of on the outs, I guess, maybe? A little bit?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
A little bit. I should just remember all of this one because I'm going to have to say the same thing next week because we're not meeting up with them again.
Yeah. Then we've got Irene and Kael. They are having a nice little montage where they train. He works out with the guards. They go through the city. They get to know each other, and they're starting the feels.
They are starting the feels.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we heard anything from Manon last week. Maybe she ran into the Did she run into the Bloodhound last week, or was that the week before?
I thought that was the week before.
Anyway.
But either way, that's the last thing we saw.
She's still MIA. She could be dead on Abraxos, for all we know. Elide and Lorcan are traveling with their little carnival people, still pretending to be married. And
so
we are starting the story with our sort of main action piece. We've got Aelin and crew battling a bunch of Valg. They are 8 ships, 2 wyverns. Aelin last week tunneled into her power for 3 days in order to completely decimate the 8 ships. However, goddess of the hunt Deanna took control of her body and attempted to destroy the town instead. So she had to pivot really fast and didn't get all of the ships. So now we had a little action scene with Lysandra. She turned into a sea dragon, took out 2 wyverns, took out 2 ships. She only has 1 ship left to destroy. She's hecka tired when she sees 3 massive forms heading straight forward. That's where we left off. So Lysandra using Danger Girl.
So danger.
Yeah. So again, this is chapters 37 to 51. So we start with Adian's point of view. So he's sort of on the tower with a spear gun thing and just watching everything unfold. Obviously him and Lysandra are close. So he is
emotionally or physically?
Emotionally.
Okay.
They've been sticking together for a while, yes. And she's supported him with his dad issues, and they've been together bonding. Yeah. So he also has made some remarks about thinking she's hot to trot and wouldn't mind.
They're very flirty too. Yeah. Together.
But he said he wouldn't mind having a go, but also would never...
Respectfully.
Yes, respectfully having a go. However, he would never, like, ask that of her because he can't imagine that after being in her line of work, she would want anybody to touch her. So,
yeah.
He wants to touch her, but he's not going to ask.
Yeah.
So, he is standing and he sees this one ship still standing. And then he sees the 3 more sea wyverns heading right for Lysandra. And he also sees that they are significantly larger than the 2 she just took out, who were already almost twice her size.
Yeah. Not good.
And it sort of makes everybody realize, oh shit, those 2 were not full grown, they were children. And in week 3, a comment was made. Yeah. By the way, if you kill the offspring of a sea wyvern, they will hunt you to the ends of the earth and won't stop until you're dead.
Like, they said, like, even streamways weren't safe.
Yeah.
Like,
they are
that's wild.
Relentless. So, this sort of why we needed that tidbit then is to understand now, shit, Lysandra just killed 2. So, they're gonna come at her.
Fucked.
Yeah. She is fucked. The adult wyverns are 3 times her size. They're quite large. And Aelin is, like, screaming on the reef to, like, shift. Like, turn into, like, a bird, get out of the water.
Yeah.
But Aelin knew that, like, Lysandra barely had any energy left.
Well, and it's such a big shift.
Yeah.
Because she's giant right
Yes. And he was like, she can't shift. She needs to regain her energy in that form until she can shift back. So, like, she's in that form right now. She's stuck. And she's also all that stands in between Aelin and the crew who are stranded on the reef.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's it. She's the last line of defense because none of them have magic right now. And
except for possibly Gavriel, but we don't even know what his magic is.
And also, like, they can't fight water creatures. Like, with their, like, they don't have magic, but sure, they have, like, swords and shit. But, like, how are they gonna fight a water creature with that?
Yeah, all I can think about is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. You'd, like, have to get inside their mouth to, like, stab them.
Yeah. So, Aelin could tell that, like, Lysandra is sort of holding the line. She's staying at the mouth of the bay to protect her queen. And Dorian sort of starts to signal to Lysandra with his magic to, like, come towards him. Because he actually still has magic. But they put him on this tower to keep him safe. So, like, sort of not... He doesn't have the range.
No, he doesn't. And also, like, if he was on one of the... if he wasn't... He could have been attacked by her.
That's true.
Magic, which would have been bad.
It also...
Can he swim? We assume so.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she ignores Dorian and dives toward the last remaining warship instead because she knows that really the town needs to be safe from the Valg. Right? And so she has to do what she came here to do and get rid of that last ship. And at that moment, Aelin actually hated Aelin for making Lysandra do this, for asking this of her. And essentially she's making Lysandra risk her life to protect them all and also call to the Mycenians.
Yeah.
And I have to sort of agree that I feel like, and maybe it's not as like an obscure thought as I think it is, but I feel like no one ever talks about, like, I feel like Lysandra's the MVP of this group.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she pulls them out of so many messes and, like, saves them frequently. But I feel like no one talks about it.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it gets overshadowed by the last book. And, like, all of the discourse about the last book. There's just so much to that book. But, like, really, yes, she is doing all of the work.
Yes!
Like, technically, Aelin fucked up when she wore the word key on the boat, and Like, that wasn't very smart. I don't really understand how it happened. Really, my brain cannot wrap around, like...
Well, I guess what else was she going to do with it? She couldn't give it to Rowan because it would have had the same results if one of them had it.
Yeah. I guess she should have given it to Dorian and been like, you keep this safe now.
But I don't think he knows about it, does he?
No, but she could have just been like, you keep this safe now.
The way you say that, it just reminds me of, like, Beverly Hillbillies. Y'all come back now, here.
Obviously she didn't expect that to happen, but, like, even if that didn't happen, Lysandra still would have been stuck with 2 babies and then 3 adults. Like, because the plan all along was that she was going to deal with the underwater shit. Like, Aelin was going to take out the ships, sure, and that did make a bit of extra work for Lysandra, but still. Yeah.
Maybe she wouldn't have been so out of, like, exhausted, because she had to do a lot of swimming and you know, I'm sure it takes a lot of energy to take down ships. Yeah. Anyway, so he also hated that Lysandra thought so little of herself that she was willing to die. And, like, I don't think that's true. I don't know if I think that's the appropriate. It's not that she thinks little of herself. She's willing to die. She's believes in the cause, so she's willing to die. You know what I mean? Like, she believes in her friend, so she's willing to die. Like
he's the exact same way, though. I don't understand how he's seeing this as her sacrificing herself in a, like, she doesn't care about herself way. But if he were the one, he would absolutely sacrifice himself. So it is weird.
Anyway, so the 3 wyverns swim after her, and the ship is firing arrows at her, because, again, she's swimming towards it, and it's causing her, like, I'm gonna say superficial scratches. She's a giant sea dragon, she's got scales. Sure, the arrows are piercing, but not significant wounds. So she is bleeding, though, and that sends the wyverns into a blood frenzy. So she actually leaps out of the air and uses her tail to hit the ship, damaging it and making wood pieces stick out. And one of the wyverns actually follows her out of the water. It's so, like, blood frenzied. And it ends up landing on the ship, getting impaled by the spikes and causing the ship to sink. So, like, took out...
Perfect.
Yeah. 2 things in one fell swoop.
Good job.
Yeah. So she keeps swimming, and the 2 other wyverns chase her. One dives deep down, but one sort of stays at the surface. And this is when she brings them near Dorian, and he uses his hoarfrost magic to freeze the water surrounding the wyvern until the wyvern is also frozen. Then, I guess there's a catapult behind Dorian in this tower that fires a huge rock, lands it on the frozen wyvern, which causes it to break into 1,000 pieces. Woo.
Love it.
Yeah, so there's only 1 wyvern left. But this one sort of learned not to get too close to Dorian. So, like...
or the other ship, I guess. Or no, I guess the ship is gone.
Ship sank, yeah.
Yeah, true.
So, like, Lysandra is trying to, like, hang out near Dorian, but the other wyvern is sort of knows not to get close.
He's hip to it now.
So she realizes that she got to figure something else out. Yeah. So she decides she's going to swim through the debris of the ship, causing herself to get injured more of her blood's clouding the water, working the last wyvern into a blood frenzy. So then she starts swimming to the other side of the bay where Aelin is. And he can tell that, like, she's starting to lag. Her energy is gone. Like, she said she was exhausted when she had a ship left. Yeah. She's since destroyed that ship and 2 wyverns in the process. So, like, if she was exhausted then, she is out of it now. Yeah. So he knows that he's going to have to use the spear gun to shoot this wyvern, and he only has 1 shot. So he has to make it count. So she leaps out of the water, and the wyvern follows, and Aelin shoots it right in the throat, and Lysandra then, pulls its head off to make sure it's dead. So, they did it. Yay!
Yay!
So, everyone watching is, really ecstatic, but Aelin just rushes for the beach that Lysandra is swimming towards. So he reaches the beach, and Aelin and her crew are swimming towards them, but he gets there first, and Lysandra, growls at him. So I think we read last week that she knew that the wyverns would not be fighting her as intelligent humans, but as beasts, so she would have to also, embrace the beast. So she's still in beast mode, I guess.
Beast mode. Love it.
So she let the beast take over and is acting out she's acting like a wild animal and doesn't want him to touch her.
Yeah. Fair.
So he talks to her to try to get the woman to come back. So he tells her some things. So he tells her that the soldiers that saw her are all half in love with her, and some want to marry her, but it doesn't matter because he is going to marry her. And it doesn't,
What?
I know, it doesn't matter when or how, but eventually she will become Princess Lysandra Ashriver. And doesn't that sound nice? And is it, this just totally came out of left field for me.
Yeah, it did.
It's one thing to be attracted to somebody, but they have had a completely, what do you call it? Relationship.
I need more than that. Tumultuous? I don't know.
No. Companion.
Short?
No, separate, but, just friends.
Yeah.
It's been exclusively, there's a word for it, and I'm just not remembering what it is. I feel like it starts with a C, but it'll come to me later, and I'll probably...
Common law?
No.
I know it's not common law, but I just can't think of anything.
It'll come to me later.
Camaraderie?
No. I might just blurt it out later, so if I blurt out a random word, that's what it is.
Okay.
Anyway, so, yeah, they've just had such a, friendly relationship that is, he's mentioned a couple of times to the reader that she's beautiful and he's attracted to her, but,
and I guess the only thing is she mentioned in, Queen of Shadows, was it, that he was hot, but it would be like kissing Aelin, which she was like, I can't do that,
So I just as a little surprise. Yes, abrupt. Yeah. Anyway, so that sort of him talking to her like that sort of does make her come back, and he can tell when she's no longer the beast. But she is in a ton of pain, and she can't shift. Yeah. So Aelin and crew sort of reach her, and all Aelin can do is say how sorry she is over and over. Rowan comments that she's losing too much blood, but, it means absolutely nothing. Yeah. It does nothing. It doesn't make anybody act in a different way. It's just an offhand comment. She's losing too much blood, but nobody does anything.
Any different? No. Yeah. They're just like,
okay.
Unfortunate. That sucks.
Yeah. Aelin sort of sees how upset Aelin is about Lysandra, so he understands that she knows the cost of putting Lysandra in that water. So, he was gonna snap at her, but he doesn't. Because he knows how hard it is for her to delegate. This entire book has been a struggle on Aelin's part not to do everything herself. And to share her plans. And, again, this was another one. She'd shared it with Lysandra, but nobody else, about her plan to recruit the Mycenaeans. So, he understands that, that must have been really hard for her.
Yeah.
So he asks, what happened?
Good
what
question.
Happened on the boat? Why did Rolf's ship blow up? And she just tells him that she lost control. And then she holds up the amulet of Ornth, which has the word key in it. And that makes him understand that there's a word key in there. And I'm like, shouldn't he have known that before?
Yeah.
But I guess her and Rowan didn't tell them?
No, they didn't tell anyone.
I feel like that was a mistake, too.
Yeah.
They should have told them.
Yeah.
And, like, he's shaking with rage that, like, she almost killed them all today and didn't tell him what she had.
Yeah.
And he growls at her, and then Rowan growls at him. Because he's like, don't you dare. That's my queen.
And I think, like, Gavriel and Fenris are still there, too. Yeah. And he's like, we can't let them know what the fuck we have.
Yeah. And yeah, so Rowan doesn't want him to say anything, like, to sort of betray any of their secrets. Aelin tells everybody that Lysandra is still too weak to shift. They obviously can't lift her anywhere because she's a humongous dragon. So they need to stay with her until she's recovered some energy.
It's interesting that she, I guess, like, doesn't need to be in the water at all. You know what I mean? Like, most animals that live in the water, even if they breathe air from the top, like whales, still need to be in the water.
That's true, yes, yeah. But I
don't know anything about dragons.
What? You don't?
I do know some things about dragons. I don't know anything about sea dragons, I guess.
So, funny enough, I wonder, like, when I picture this scene, I sort of picture her half in and half out of the water. Because she's on a reef, like, beach thing, right? So, like, I just picture her, like, her sort of maybe her head and maybe a little bit of her body out of the water and everything else still submerged. So,
okay, I buy that.
I don't know. That's just my perception. I don't think it says that anywhere.
No, but
like, she's gigantic, so I wouldn't think there'd be space on the beach for her.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway,
that makes more sense with the way aquatic animals work.
Do you know how aquatic animals work?
Not all of them.
Anyway. So Aelin volunteers to stay with Lysandra, obviously, while Aelin goes to deal with, like, Rolf, because Rolf's gonna be pissed and want to know what happened. And Gavriel's like, I can go get you some supplies, like food and water and maybe some clothes. I don't know.
Whatever supplies they
Get him
need.
some shit while he's hanging out on the beach.
Get him a book.
You know, it's weird. I was just thinking, like, a tent. But I'm like, you don't usually use tents on the beach.
Yeah. Also,
maybe a beach chair.
A beach chair. That's good.
Anyway, so Aelin just sort of, like, does a blanket apology to everybody again. And just pieces out. So we skip over to Gavriel's point of view really quick. And, like, I don't know how much, like, worth this sort of section has. Like,
he's not a bad man.
Well, I guess. It's just sort of him referring to himself as the lion. Like, he doesn't refer to himself as Gavriel. He's like, I'm the lion. And Aelin is the wolf. Which I also find weird, because isn't Fenris also a wolf? And Connor is also a wolf?
Yeah.
So, like, how are we keeping all the wolves straight here?
But he's the wolf of the north.
I guess. Isn't that from Game of Thrones?
I never...
Don't know.
Never
I feel like it might be. Anyway, so he's, like, hiding in the woods. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, is he hiding in the woods as a lion or as a person?
And why is as a person so much creepier? Because it is.
So, like, he's hiding in the woods watching Aelin, aka the wolf, sit with Lysandra. But he doesn't refer to her as Lysandra, he refers to her as the Shifter. So he's not using anybody's names. And I'm like...
I think this is just, like, an artistic choice by Sarah J Maas. I don't think this is how he thinks in his head, but we can headcanon that it is, and that is funny.
I'm just thinking, like, is he just trying to disassociate from everybody and not use names? Like, what's going on? Referring to himself in the third person as the lion. Anyway, so he actually stays in the woods hiding and watches Aelin stay with her until she shifts back into a human. But obviously she's still too exhausted to stand, so he watches Aelin carry Lysandra back to the inn. He's impressed that he took out a sea wyvern with one shot. And I'm like, you're impressed with your son who took out one wyvern. Meanwhile, that girl that he picked up off the beach took out 3 ships and 3 wyverns all on her own. She had help with 2. But, like, she took on all that on her own. You're not impressed with her?
Mm-hmm. Men.
Ugh, I hate it. Down with the patriarchy. And he just thinks about how his son is only 24 and already a legend. And I'm like, you do not get to steal her thunder today.
No. She's the legend
today. She is the legend today. And then he wonders if people will talk about his involvement today, or if Aelin will let people talk about who his father is. So he's like, I wonder if people will mention, like, when they think about today, will they mention that I was there? And I'm like, dude, you didn't do anything!
We don't even know if he has power.
Why do you care? Why would anybody care that you're here? Mm-hmm. Ugh. Friggin' men. Anyway, we skip now to Aelin's point of view. She is exhausted, tired, and angry about Deanna using her body, and she...
Fair.
Yes. Kept replaying what she said over and over again. Like, calling her the queen who was promised. She met with Rolf, and he is absolutely pissed. Because he didn't hear or see the stuff with Deanna. All he saw was Aelin lose control.
Yeah.
And then Rowan sort of quickly makes up for it by telling him that, like, the power is a living thing, and remembering yourself is an effort. So, like, they want to keep the whole Deanna thing under wraps.
Yeah.
Because, like, the reason Deanna got in was because she was wearing the word key. So they don't want to tell anybody that they have a word key. So. And Aelin reminds Rolf that he just allied with a young queen who can decimate cities. So, like, that is good. Like, that makes him untouchable. And she tells him to salvage what he can of his ship, mourn the 12 men who died, and she will take responsibility for them and compensate their families, and just shut his mouth. And he asks then if she knows what the map cost. His, like, hand map. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I mean, I heard it was your soul. And then we sort of get his backstory. He tells her that when he was 16, he was barely more than a slave on one of these ships. And any money he made went right back to his mother and sister who lived in Skulls Bay. So the boat he was on got caught in a storm, and the captain was too proud to find safe harbor, so the boat sank. He managed to float and find a piece of debris, and he was, like, in and out of consciousness. He did wash up on a shore, and when he woke up, there was a man standing over him, and the man asked him what he wanted. And he was so delirious and didn't really understand, like, I guess maybe thought he was dreaming. And he said...
Mm-hmm. He thought he was dead.
Yeah. He said he wanted to be the pirate lord of Skulls Bay and make the captains who killed his friends bow before him. So, like, all these captains that had all this power could have gone into a harbor to save everybody. Instead, he was like, no, the storm's not that bad. I'm the best captain of the 7 seas. Ugh.
7? We don't know how many seas there are in this world.
I'm just...
I know.
But you know what I mean? So, like, he was like, I want to bring all those guys to their knees for being assholes.
Yeah.
And the stranger said he could grant his wish, but there would be a price, which is what he values the most. And he's like, well, I don't have any possessions, so fine. I agree. And I'm like, come on, dude, it's never a possession. Ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he just agreed. The guy vanished into the mist. Rolf passed out again, and when he woke up, the map was inked on his skin. So he made it back to Skull's Bay by using his map, and when he got back, his mom and sister were dead. Apparently, they had hired a skiff to go out looking for him, and they did not return, even though the guy who piloted the skiff did return.
Do you think he killed him?
I think he did.
Him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He's a pirate.
Yeah. And so Rolf's like, well, that's what he handed over to the stranger, the price for his map. And he said losing them made him soulless enough that he let himself loose upon the city, and that's the price of his power. So he's like, what will your price be? Because in his mind, that amount of power comes with a price. She just has to pay it. So,
and she
will. So this is sort of the moral of the story of why we get his backstory. Is he's sort of telling her, like,
there's gonna be a cost for this.
Yes, This is lesson.
It's all foreshadowing.
Yes, it is. So she doesn't really answer that. She just, like, storms out to an empty beach with Rowan following her. He asks if she willingly used the key, but she tells him no. That it seemed like Deanna was, like, lying in wait like a spider, waiting for her to use her power and word key together so she could take over. Sort of like a trap. And she's also really pissed at him that he would jump in front of her like that, because she wouldn't forgive herself if she hurt him. But he knows she wouldn't forgive herself if she killed half the town either. So it's sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Yeah. And subconsciously, I feel like he knew she wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Or couldn't do it, maybe.
Anyway, so they're both really pissed that Deanna invaded her, and Rowan wants to, like, hunt her down, and I'm like, this is a goddess. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You can't hunt down and kill a goddess. She can't die. What are you gonna do, dude? Anyway, Aelin is sort of like, we have more pressing concerns, like a war with Erewhon. And then Rowan tells her that, like, her being more powerful, like, the amount of power that she has was even more than either of them anticipated. So, because she sort of thought that, she describes reaching after the 3 days, finding, like, an ashy bottom to her power, and she sort of thought that that was it. But then, I guess, reflecting, she realizes that that wasn't it. It was just sort of like, there's another level underneath still to go. So, like, she has an enormous amount of power that, like, that is obviously going to be very, very difficult for her to control. So, he just says, like, this means nothing. Like, you being more powerful doesn't make me scared of you. I still love you. And essentially says that, like, this power is actually a blessing because it can win the war. And she can't, like, he's like, you can't resent it. And she just sort of admits that, like, sometimes she wishes someone else could fight this war. And I feel like that's a common, like, YANA, like, sort of fantasy trope, is, like, the chosen one, like, has a moment where they wish they weren't the chosen one.
Yeah, the reluctant chosen one.
But Rowan sort of makes her feel better by teasing her, saying, like, but you're the only one who can get under Erewhon's skin with your insufferable swagger. So he starts, like, nipping and kissing her ear and neck and tells her he's never taken someone on a beach before. And I'm like, in 500 years, you've never had sex on a beach?
It's a drink. It's named after something. He has to have done it.
And, like, she's sort of worried someone will come looking, but he's like, then they'll see how I plan to worship you. So, like, they're all about the voyeurism at this point. Like,
yeah.
So,
first time and voyeurism. Yeah. Okay. And YA book. YA book.
So she tells him then that she is in love with him and has been for a while, but she understands that there are limits to what he is able to give her and that he may need time. She's sort of more thinking about the fact that, like, Lyra's was his mate. Obviously he's not going to have the same feelings for Aelin as he did for her, and, like, so she's just saying, like, I understand all that, is essentially what she's...
Like, she's kind of saying, too, that, like, he's the biggest love she's ever had in her life, but she recognizes that he has had a mate.
Yes.
And she does not have a mate, so she's like, I get, you've had bigger love.
Yeah. But then he tells her that he loves her and that he needs no time and there are no limits. That even when this world is a forgotten whisper of dust, he will love her.
Well then.
Yeah, they have very intense declarations. Yeah. And, like, Aelin starts to cry. And I'm like, it's very sexy.
I feel like there's more crying than you'd think in Sarah J Maas's sex scenes.
Yes. And she sort of says, like, she'd never let herself say that or be so vulnerable with someone or felt this way about anyone before. And she said it was so burning and unending, and she felt like she could die from the force of it.
What could that mean?
So, like, she is already naked because she was in the water for a bit, so, like, she's nude.
Yeah.
So he, like, lays her in the sand, and he puts up like an air shield around them so that no one can get through and, like, see them, I guess. And he also tells her that she won't hurt him, like, in terms of magic, because I guess part of the concern is that when she's orgasming or in throes of passion, she'll let her magic loose.
Which is, like, such a, also, YA NA trope.
Yeah. So, I guess he's reassuring her that, don't worry, she won't hurt him.
Good.
And she asks if it's that different with someone like her. And I don't really understand what she means. Like, in terms of power?
I guess maybe, but I'm also like, it's not like he was fucking humans before. I doubt, like, do you think he's ever been with a human?
I don't know.
Because, like, he lived in Dornell, so, like...
I don't think he's been with a human. I don't, because he sort of had weird feelings towards humans.
Yeah, so, like, does she mean as a half-human? What is it like with her?
No, because he then responds that he doesn't know because he's never been with an equal before.
I know. It's like, Sarah J Maas, you need to spell this shit out for us. Like, I said it once, I'll say it again. We are not smart enough for whatever you're trying to imply here.
That's true, yes. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm so... It confuses me. But it's fine. So he still has his pants on, and she suggests, like, he should take them off.
Good plan.
So then she starts to do it herself, and she tells him that he's hers, and she was like, you're mine, you love me, and his response is, to whatever end, which is an iconic line for the series.
Yeah.
I sort of forgot that it came from their big sex scene. So everyone's going around, like, repeating, to whatever end, and it's like, oh, it's sex.
To whatever end, orgasms. I'm still fine with it, I'll stop.
So he takes off his pants then, and he repeats the same thing she just said to him. So he goes, you're mine, you love me. And then she responds the same way, to whatever end. And he starts taking it slow, and, like, she's obviously super into it, and he uses his magic to, like, caress places. And that causes her to, like, erupt in flames. Like, her body is literally on fire. She wants his pee in her vagine. So she, like, grabs it and, like, strokes his, and I quote, velvet wrapped steel.
Yeah. Also iconic.
Yeah. Until, like, he can't take it, and he tells her he wants to touch her, so he does, and then he eats her out a bit. And, like, his magic is going wild, and her magic is going wild, but neither of them are hurting each other because they're both so powerful. But, like, he obviously doesn't let her come. Instead, he penetrates her. That's gonna do it for her.
Of course it is.
So, it always does.
YA trope.
So, she says that feeling him seated inside of her makes her forget her title and her own name. And words don't do it justice in any language.
What could all of this mean?
I don't know. But she comes and he presses his teeth to her neck. Almost like he's marking her in some way.
Yeah. And also reminiscent of the time he did it in Air of Fire. That was problematic, but hot as fuck.
And then he comes seemingly for ages. And when they can finally speak again, he tells her he didn't know it could be like that. And she's like, me neither. So, like, he's already insinuating that this sex is better than sex with his mate.
And anyone in 500 years. Like, she's only been with Kale, so, like, I don't blame her for her, like, innocence. But him, I'm like, dude, I hate that. Like, stop. Yeah. Stop. You're only with the right person if the first time you guys have sex, it's amazing. Did you not know that?
My bad.
Right? Fuck.
Anyway.
I hate
like, it's a hot scene. Not
so
taking
hot.
away from it. It's just, now that we're getting down to, like, I agree with you. I hate the trope of, like, the first time they're having sex, like, it's fucking incredible, and, like, she's coming multiple times. Now, she doesn't, but, like...
Yeah. But you're saying in 500 years, he's never been with someone so many times that he learned their body to, like, that extent sexually? Like, he had a mate. Of course he would have learned her body.
But, like...
Although she was kind of afraid of him.
I don't know. I feel like we need... And, like, we're gonna get his point of view in a second. But, like, he doesn't think about his mate at all.
No.
And in my head, I'm like, okay, if I had a supposed mate, and that person was supposed to be my complete complement in every single way, and they died, and it destroyed me, and shattered me, and made me a completely different person for, like, over 100 years. And, like, I was literally grieving for that long. And then, the first, like, this new person that I'm in a relationship with, and I actually have the best sex of my life, like, would that not call into question for, like...
Yeah, I guess the point that he's not thinking of his mate, in quotation marks, I'm gonna say, is because it's a sign.
I guess, but, like, you would just think that somebody that has held on to their grief of this person for so long, you would think that the fact that he's not thinking about it would make him think about it and be like, huh, I'm not thinking about her. I wonder if that means something.
Yeah. You know, I kind of wonder if it's like, he has been grieving for so long that he's, like, finally feeling like a real person again now, and, like, everything was kind of, like, gray in the grief, and then he's finally like, I'm alive again. Not actually, but, you know, like, kind of.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I could see you being like, that's the best thing ever, because it's just been so long since he's not hated himself.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, it is weird that he's not thinking about his mate at all.
Anyway. So, Aelin already wants to go again. And
of course. She only had one orgasm.
She brings up biting. And she wants him to bite her. And he brings up Wendelin when he put his teeth to her throat that we just mentioned and how it was problematic. And he sort of tells her that when he lost control and got a taste of her, he would wake up tasting and has been thinking about all the depraved things he wants to do to her. So, like, that sort of started his obsession with her.
Yeah. Which is funny because he, like, kept it real close to the chest in Air of Fire.
He did, yeah. He then tells her that actually some males do like biting their females for pleasure and to sort of mark their territory. And she asks if females ever bite males. And thinking about that makes him hard again. So they go again. Then we go to Rowan's point of view. Yep. And they had sex 3 times on the beach, and he still wants more. Almost reminiscent of in Akamath after chapter 55. And Rhys discusses how much he wants Feyre.
Yeah.
Sort of reminded me of that a little bit.
A little bit, especially with what happens next.
So he feels like he has been broken and remade after the first time they had sex. He did mark her. He combined their scents, so like any fae would know they belong to each other. And he knew that she understood what this meant, and it meant that she was choosing him over a political alliance. So, like, in his mind, they're as good as, like, married. Yeah. Right? Like, in his mind, he's like, okay, our scents are mingled. That means she's not allowed to get married for political gain anymore. I'm it.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, like, a human wouldn't realize that.
Humans can't smell shit.
Also, if she settles, wait 80 years, have the alliance, and then go back with him.
But, like, having kids with your, you know, it's a bit on the ick.
Yeah, but you just take a potion and say, oh, can't have kids. You have...
Yeah, smart.
Yeah.
You're a genius.
Lie and cheat.
Well, and then, like, be like, I'm gonna go back to Terracin for a month, and then go back to Terracin, and then come back and be like, oh, I'm pregnant. You must have impregnated me before I left. Anyway, he says he's going to try and be worthy of it, of this role as her person.
Yeah, and like this, like she potentially sacrificed health by picking him over. So like, I get what he's saying, but also, what else could she have done?
So they head back to her room, and everyone is in there waiting for them. And just the sight of Aelin and Dorian around Aelin makes him want to roar with rage.
What?
Since it's a dangerous time after a female takes a lover when it means something more. So again, exactly what happens in Akamath when after Feyre and Rhys do the deed, chapter 55, 56, 55. They do it a million times, then they go back to the house, and Cassian is there, and they have to fight. Because Rhys can't stand anybody looking in Feyre's direction. Same thing. I wonder what that means. So, he does sort of chill it out.
Yeah.
And lets Aelin tell everybody about the word key, how she tricked Lorcan, and what happened with Deanna. So this is their first sort of moment with just their little crew.
Yeah.
And then she hauls out some books on word marks that she magically took with her, and decides that they need to summon Elena.
Sure.
She can just do that now.
Yep.
So, the connection is really weak, because they're obviously very far from Adelin. Or from Rifthold. But Aelin tells her about Deanna, and is annoyed with Elena, because she didn't kill Erewhon, but sealed him up so that someone else could deal with it. Yeah. And we sort of, from our prequel of this book, when we see Elena and Gavin sort of talking about what they're gonna do and how they're gonna put it off to another generation, like they're not happy that they have to do it. Anyway, so she asks Elena about the lock, and Elena tells her that her father forged the lock at the cost of her mother's mortal body, that it was meant to bind the keys, but Elena didn't know that that's what it was for, so she took it and used it to bind Erewhon instead. And it was a one-time use object that they placed in a temple at the center of a city that used to be in the center of the marshes in Eelway. So, essentially, if Elena's father is telling Aelin to go there, then she must need that lock for something. So, obviously, Aelin is pissed that Elena screwed up.
Fucked up. Yeah.
And passed the problem on to them, but she asks, like, who was your mother anyway? Like, no one really knows. And Elena tells her it was Mala Firebringer, who is a goddess. So, Aelin is not only the descendant of Brannon, like the founder of Terrasen, but of a goddess as well. Wild. It is wild. And Elena then just disappears after dropping that bomb.
That's true.
And then they talk about what they're gonna do. So they obviously are going to send half of Rolf's fleet to Terrasen to protect it, just in case. And the other half, they're going to split in half again. Some are going to stay here to protect Skull's Bay, and the rest are going to go with them to Eelway to hunt down the lock in the marshes. Are they called the Stone Marshes?
The Stone Marshes.
They leave the very next day. With Rolf sort of giving them a vague location on his mappy hands. And then they sail for 3 days before they spot a single wyvern flying to them, and Dorian sees white hair and blood all over the saddle. The wyvern flies as low as possible, and Dorian is yelling not to shoot before the wyvern drops the witch into the sea. And then we move on to part 2 of this book, which is called Fireheart. And we start with Elide's point of view. So they traveled with the carnival, and they weren't making a ton of money, but Elide, like, watched Lorcan perform, and he's not a great performer. Like, he doesn't have this showmanship, but he does have skill, and he's, like, super hot. So he performs shirtless, so everybody just ogles him and gives him money. And, like, Elide, too, is, like, staring at him and looking at him. Molly sort of approaches her and mentions that she's lucky Lorcan still looks at her that way, considering all the attention he gets. Sort of implying that you're lucky.
He looks at her away.
Yeah, he looks at her in a certain way. She goes back to her little tent because she's supposed to be like an oracle. And a little while later, Lorcan comes in. And they chat a bit about being with others. I guess she's like, oh, I'm surprised you're here. Like, you have a ton of girls you could go be with. Anyway, and then she sort of admits that she had never been with anyone before.
Of course. And he is enamored by that.
Yeah, of course. It's their preoccupation with virginity again.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway, that's when they start hearing screaming. So then we pop over to Lorcan's point of view really quick. He actually finished his performance early after seeing Elide in the crowd. And he followed her.
So he looks at her away.
He looks at her away. And he followed her scent back to her tent. And he sort of didn't know why he was there. Because he couldn't touch her. And he was so preoccupied with staring at her mouth that he didn't register the danger. Until he heard the screaming. But normally his magic would have picked up on it before now. So he's starting to get feels.
Yeah.
So he yells at...
The guy falls first.
Yeah. So he yells at Marion to get under the wagon and stay there while he goes to investigate. And he goes to the edge of the village where they're camping out and scents 4 Ilkin. And he knows that they're hunting Marion. So, the Ilkin had landed right in the middle of the carnival camp and gutted somebody. They don't know who. Like, not a member of the carnival. But Umbriel and Nick were sort of showed up behind him, and they were, like, armed to the hilt, prepared to fight. So he approaches the Ilkin, and they tell him that they're seeking a young, dark-haired, crippled girl, and they want to inspect the crew. Lorcan obviously knows they're looking for Elide, so he lies to them. They don't have anyone with that description here. And the crew are all scared away, so they can't inspect them. The Ilkin offer gold, say that her name is Elide Lorcan, and is the Lord of Paranth's niece, and he wants her back. So, Lorcan knows now. She's obviously lied about who she is, and prevented him from smelling the lie, which is a feat, because he can smell lies?
Yeah, we got that last week, and we were like, I don't understand his magic.
No.
Does he just smell he smells emotions, which, like, I like that better than all of this shit of people reading it on your face.
Yeah.
I like being able to smell it better.
Yeah, yes. Anyway, so he still, like, covers for her. He's not mad enough to, like, throw her to the Ilkin. But he's like, no, I don't know who that is. And the Ilkin say, like, we were prepared to take her and go, but if she's not here, we've flown a long way. We're hungry. Implying they're gonna have some tasty people snacks. Skip over to Elide's point of view. She is hiding under a floor compartment of a wagon, and, like, she's been there for a long time. And she doesn't hear much anymore, and she's just worried that everybody is dead.
Yeah, including Lorcan.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, sad.
Yeah.
Too bad.
So she finally decides, like, enough is enough. I can't sit here anymore. I'm gonna make a run for it. So, like, she pokes out, and it's really quiet. There's no screaming. But Lorcan is sitting in the wagon, waiting for her to pop out. So he's just been sitting there, letting her rot in this little cubby for ages. And he's pissed. He's, like, covered in Ilkin blood, and told her that Ilkins love to talk with the right motivation, aka torture. And just a part of me doesn't really understand this, because he met them in the woods, tried to kill them, and they knit themselves back together. So how is it he was able to kill 4 that time?
Magic. I don't know, dude. I don't get it.
Anyway, it is what it is. He couldn't do it then, but all of a sudden he can now. So we skip back to his point of view. He thought she was a cunning little liar, and told her that she should have told him that she's the rightful lady of Paranth, and her uncle is Erewhon's right hand. And
I didn't really realize he was.
Yeah, I know, but he is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they all know that, like, Aelin would do a lot to get her back. So, like, she's not just her uncle's possession, she's a bargaining tool. And, like, I guess. But not like Aelin's gonna bargain with her. Like, and I mean for her. Like, not that I mean for her. Like, I know that if Aelin knew that Erewhon had her, she would, yes, bargain for her. But if Aelin had her, she wouldn't use her.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But I think Lorcan is like, I could use her to bargain with Erewhon or to bargain with Aelin.
Yeah. So her response is that, like, he's also been keeping secrets, and, like, why should she have spilled hers when he also keeps secrets? And that she gave him exactly what he wanted to see. A lost woman in need of help and not worth more than a minute's consideration since she's human. And essentially, like, she was like, you were gonna drop me the minute you got what you needed from me. And he's just like, don't speak to me that way. And she's like, why? Are you gonna sell me back to Morath? And he's like, don't tempt me. And she's like, if you try, I'll kill myself before we make it. And that sort of makes him check his rage, because he sees that she's, like, serious.
Yeah.
And he's annoyed that he played into her expectations, because he's like, damn, she's right. Like, I never thought twice about her story. I didn't he didn't hunt for the lie because he didn't think she was good enough to lie to him. Mm-hmm. Even though he's seen her adapt and change and, like, saw that she could, like, spin her emotions on a dime and make people believe shit, he was like, oh, she wouldn't do that with me. It's like, dude, yes, she did. Like, give credit where credit is due. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he asks what she has to give to Selena that makes the Ilkin hunt her, but she won't tell him. And he knows that this is a line he cannot cross, and that if he steals it from her, she wouldn't come back from that after everything that's happened to her. So, like, he doesn't want to betray her, because he knows that it would break her. And then she confides in him that Marion was her mother, and bought time for Aelin to run, and that her uncle watched and smiled as her father was executed, took his title, and locked her in Paranth Tower for 10 years with bars on the windows and only her nursemaid. And that the reason she has a limp the way she does is because she broke her ankle, and her uncle didn't trust any healers, so they just left it to heal on its own. Which is, like, what? But
you're also like, did he not trust healers, or did he just not care?
Yeah. Like, what do you mean by not trust healers? Like, was it a magic thing? Was it a, like, he didn't trust magic? He didn't, like, trust...
Well, magic would have been gone by then.
Well, that's what I mean.
By the time, like, yeah.
So, like, was it that...
These timelines.
I know. Or is it that he didn't want anyone to know she existed?
Yeah, true. Because nobody knows that she's still alive. Yeah. Everyone kind of assumes she's dead. Mm-hmm. So I think he told her that it was because he didn't trust healers because of
whatever
the
reason.
King and everything.
Yeah.
Like, they could sell us out. How? Why? Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So then she sort of says, like, I've literally been stuck in the tower for 10 years until, like, 6 months ago when he put me in a prison wagon, chained me up, and made me be a servant. And she says she was able to escape. She just took her chance. She has no money or lands, but she wants to offer her services to Aelin and help just in case she can keep even one girl with dealing with what she did. Then he opens up to her and tells her that he is bloodsworn to Maeve, was born a bastard on the streets of Dornell, and that his magic is death, which is why Maeve wanted him, and that he's disobeying her orders right now, and her sentinels are probably hunting him down. So he's like, it's in your best interest to pretend you don't know me.
Good.
She asks if he has any friends or family, and he says no. And she says, well, I guess we're like that way. And in my head, I'm like, I mean, she does have family. Like, she still has an uncle. He still exists. He's a terrible person, but he's still alive.
Yeah. Well, and we never really investigate if there's anybody that's a witch that is technically related to her. Ever.
Nope.
We never look into that, because, like, they're immortal. There's probably somebody somewhere that she's still related to.
Yep.
Cool.
It's fine.
Nope, never.
It's fine. She then asks, like, do we need to leave? Since Nick and Umbriel saw him, like, kill 4 Ilkin. But he says that they can stay for now. And as she walks away, he sort of wonders what he's doing. Like, as in what am I doing? Why am I doing this sort of thing? So, then we go to Manon's point of view. She sort of wonders if she's in hell. It's like the first, like, line of her point of view that we've had in, like, 2 weeks. She's in so much pain. She feels she's in hell.
Yeah.
So, she woke up and Aelin was there telling her that she owes her another life debt.
I love it.
And Aelin then reassures her that Abraxos is okay, and he's sunning on the deck.
I love Abraxos.
I know, he's great. She asks how Manon got the wound she got, and Manon tries to tell her that as soon as she heals, she'll be on her way. Like, don't worry about me. But Aelin's like, no. She's like, Abraxos can come and go as he pleases, but you are my prisoner. And if you try to escape, you die. If you hurt anyone on the ship, you die.
You get it.
You get it. So Manon, like, wants to escape, but then she's like, I don't really have anywhere to go.
Aww.
Just sad. But she
sad.
like, falls into despair because, like, her whole life is gone. She doesn't know where the 13 are, if they're even alive. And then she sleeps for 3 days.
Fair.
Yeah. So, Dorian's point of view. He is on watch for Manon. Because no one trusts her when she wakes up. So, like, everyone's got it. Someone has to be watching her at all times. So she asks him what happened, and he tells her that Abraxos flew straight for them, and she fell into the water. He does not tell her that he's the one who jumped in after her.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. He asks her, since she's part Valg, is she on Erewhon's team? And she tells him that Erewhon is now her enemy, and then she asks if Elide is here, where her 13 are, but Dorian's like, I don't know any of that. And Manon sort of then tells him, like, she's no longer the Blackbeak heir, so you can't really use me to bargain with my grandmother. And she also tells him that the cost of helping him in Rifthold was the life of her second, which she refused to pay. So she bought them time to run. So, like, he essentially was asking, like, is this because you helped me? And she said, the answer is kind of.
Yeah.
Like, yes and no. I was going to have to kill my second because I helped you, and I chose not to do that.
Yeah.
She then tells him that if he can find any info on the 13 for her, she'll be his to command. And he's like, I'll do what I can, but, like, we're in the middle of an ocean, so, like...
I'm on a boat.
And, like, it's a very big world.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, he's like, I'll do what I can. She asks about Elide again and tells him to tell Aelin that Elide Lorcan is alive and looking for her. So she's in and out of consciousness again for the next few days. She dreamt of killing her sister, half-sister, and of an actual dream of watching her grandmother kill her father. Like, I think she made that up in her head. Like, she doesn't actually, she didn't witness that.
She doesn't have a memory of that now.
So that is an actual dream.
Mm-hmm.
And she feels guilty because, according to legend, she is supposed to bring the world peace, but instead she let her grandmother turn her into a weapon for war. And I'm like, how could you have known? Like,
yeah, she was brainwashed from birth. Like, it's hard to, it's a cult, generally.
And she also didn't know who her parents were until her grandmother told her. What's she supposed to, like, nobody told her anything.
Yeah, she thought her mother died in childbirth, not that her grandmother killed her because she was soft-hearted.
Yeah.
Wild. It's surprising that her grandmother let her live. Like, she seems to have zero regard. I know they're like, witchling babies are our future and we care about them. But she doesn't give a single fuck about any of the actual witches being alive. So it's surprising that she didn't kill her at some point.
I feel like she just delighted in turning her from the legend of trying to bring everyone together into this monster. Like, I think she's sadistic.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, so she keeps seeing, like, animals in her room as she's in and out of consciousness. And, like, it's Lysandra, Fenris, Gavriel. And she just wishes that they would bite down on her throat and end it all. But they don't. Sad. Yeah, so she's at a real low place. So, we head to Lorcan's point of view now. So, 3 days after this attack with the Ilkin, they're still traveling with the carnival. Nothing has happened. And they're staying at a town, but they're using the inn. Like, normally they're using tents and camping or, like, you know, that sort of a thing, or, like, using the wagon itself. But this time they have to actually sleep in the inn. So instead of, like, just going right to her room and going to bed, Elide wants to go for a walk. And it's thunder, which there's thunder happening, which means like there's a storm coming in. And Lorcan's like, why do you want to go for a walk? Like, it's about to storm. And she's like, yeah, but a storm means that people are looking for shelter and being stuck inside with nothing to do. So, like, there's going to be gossip. So, like, let's go look for some information.
She's being smart.
She's being very smart. So they follow some sailors into a tavern and sit and order food and drink. And Lorcan just comments that, like, not to her, but in his head, that he's never met someone so unimpressed with him before.
I love it.
I do too, but it's also just one of those very cliche things of like,
oh, of course,
you know, like, oh, I'm so amazing, and this person actually, like, do you know what it reminds me of? Ella Enchanted.
Oh, yeah.
Because the prince is like, you're the first girl that hasn't swooned at the sight of me. And she's like, yeah, I wonder why.
And it's only because of her circumstances.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she would swoon at him.
Yeah, for sure. So, anyway, so it's just cute and funny. So they sit, and he remarks that, like, he likes watching her calculate and lie and, like, adopt these, like, contradicting personas. And he wondered what Maeve could do with someone of her talents.
Interesting.
But then at the same time, he dreads the thought of Maeve getting her hands on Elide. So, like, it's an interesting way to think there, Lorcan buddy.
Especially since he loves Maeve.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Sure he does. So she just listens in on conversations, and she sort of, like, fakes and pretends that she hasn't heard any news in weeks, and, she hears that, like, people are speculating that Aelin is gonna go to Eelway, and they go to 3 different taverns and do the same thing each time, and learn the same thing. Most people think that she's going to Eelway, which I don't really know why, but whatever.
Yeah. Nobody knows what they're doing, because they barely know what they're doing.
Yeah. But she sort of is at a loss then, because she's like, Eelway is so far away. And she was literally heading to Terracin, which is in the exact opposite direction. So, she's frustrated.
Of course, yeah.
Lorcan offers to get her a map, but she's like, well, that's useless. I never learned to read. And... yeah, I know, right? It's just, ugh. So he's thinking about what it'll be like to separate from her and travel alone again and never see her again. And he's sad about it.
Yeah.
But then his magic picks up movement from a garrison coming towards them. And they assume that the carnival people, Nick and Umbriel, sold them out. So they need to get out real quick. Mm-hmm. So obviously Elide can't run very fast with her limp, so Lorcan picks her up and carries her to one of the barges and commandeers it from the person who owns it. Then we switch over to Elide's point of view. So they steal the barge, but the dude who owns it, like, they know that they need to hide in the barge in order to get out of town. Like, they can't kick the guy off the barge while they're in town. He's the one that has to steer them out, like, past the, I don't know, harbor masters or whatever.
Yeah.
So the guy's like, just drop me off around the corner, like, don't kill me. And they're like, okay. So they hide inside, the driver gets them out, and Lorcan goes out first, and Elide hears a splash. When she goes out, Lorcan's like, oh, the dude swam to shore. And she's like, what a lie, you killed him. And she's pissed, because he killed somebody.
After promising that he wouldn't. I think the issue is he was like, yeah, I won't kill you, and then he does it. And
yeah.
She's like, that's rude.
But to be fair, it was Elide that promised not to kill him. Elide made that bargain, not Lorcan.
Which is probably why she's more annoyed, because it's her word that wasn't held. But it's also like, you can't promise for somebody else, you know?
Yeah. And on top of that, too, it's like, if Lorcan can sort of sense intentions, then, you know, it's... If he can sense intentions and he could tell that the intention of this guy was to not be a good guy and to give them up anyway, then I think what else is he gonna do? Yeah.
But, like, wouldn't they be long gone? And isn't it obvious, like, this is kind of the way they're going?
I don't know, I think, like, they wouldn't have known that they had gotten a barge out of town. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, maybe. Eventually they'll be like, they're gone! But I guess they should have just kept him on the boat longer and then thrown him off further away.
Yes. Yeah.
But, you know, Lorcan obviously doesn't care about killing people, so it's fine.
Yeah. But anyway, so, like, because she's so angry, the stone in her pocket starts to pulse.
Interesting.
With how angry she is. And he just asks again, because he can sense it. He's like, what is that in your pocket? And again, like, he's asked her multiple times what she has, and she hasn't told him. So he goes inside, and Elide hears a crack, and he comes out just fuming.
I love this part.
So he, we can assume that he opened the locket that he's had, and realized that he didn't have a word stone or a word key at all. So he then tells her all about Celaena Sardothien and how she's an infamous assassin who reveled in her life and indulged in riches while Elide was trapped in that tower. And he's sort of trying to, like, pit her against her and make her resent her a little bit.
Yeah, because he hates her so much.
Yeah. And then she fell in love with Rowan and started using her original name again, Aelin. So he essentially says, like, your two jobs, find Celaena and then find Aelin, is the same. Like, she's the same person.
Which she's like, thank you. That's useful.
She is, but she's also like, you've known the whole time and you didn't tell me. So, like, she's pissed.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And then he tells her that Aelin is a thief, a liar, and a murderer. And... like, again, he's trying to make Elide dislike Aelin. And, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if he's hoping that she'll be Team Lorcan, but, you know, he's trying to be like, see how shitty your life was? Well, she was living it up that whole time. Yeah.
It's... I don't think he really thinks this is going to go anywhere. He's just so pissed, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's still like, dude, this isn't going to work. It's the, like, one hope she has. Also, if you do dash it, then what? She's going to be distraught. So that's not good either.
Well, I mean, he's already said, like, earlier, after the fight with the Ilkin, he was, like, debating, like, he knew that if he tried to take the stone from her, he could physically take it. Mm-hmm. He could easily overpower her, but he knew that if he did that, it would, like, destroy the last, like, little tendril of hope she possesses. So, like, he didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So, like, I feel like this is sort of the same thing.
Yeah. But it's also, like, I get that he's getting feelings and shit, but I'm like, I guess his point now, the reason he's not taking it from her now is he's like, I'll just keep her with me.
Yeah.
I don't need to take it from her because I'll keep her. So, because, like, obviously he's not going to let her give it to Aelin.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. Interesting times.
Yeah. Anyway, so Elide sort of gets really mad at him then, and tells him that they are nothing alike, because earlier when they, like, sort of bared their pasts to each other, and then they realized that neither of them really have any friends or family, she was like, oh, well, we're alike that way at least. But then she tells him that they're nothing alike, because Lorcan chooses to be alone, and pretend he likes it that way, but really he's jealous and lonely and unhappy. So she's dropping all the truth bombs. So then she's like, drop me off and I'll make my way to Eelway myself. As thinking like, I can do it, I'm fine. And he's like, no, I have business with Aelin now, so I'm going to escort you. And she's like, I don't want you to. He's like, too bad. But then she goes into the cabin, but Lorcan reiterates, by the way, you are still my wife. And I'm like, was that a necessary reminder? Like,
yeah.
I think that's just what he wants to happen.
Yeah.
He likes being her being his wife. I actually really loved it, but it's just cute.
It's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
Especially since he was so reluctant in the beginning, and
yeah.
now he's like, but you're my wife!
Yeah. Anyway, so then we go to Lorcan's point of view, and he is, again, fuming. So he found inside the amulet, it was just a wordstone ring with a note inside taunting him, and it's sort of like, next time we meet, I hope you'll have a better name for me than bitch.
Which I love.
I do too. And I also agree, like, come on, be a bit more creative.
Yeah, exactly.
But he sort of felt stupid that he gave them info for this when, like, this is worth nothing for him.
Yeah, that he didn't realize before now.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's like, he wants to carve Aelin up piece by piece. And it also, like, he knows what Elide has, but he's like, I'm gonna figure that out later. For now, I'm gonna make Aelin crawl. He's gotta, like, come up with a plan.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I hate powerful men that are like, I'm gonna make this woman crawl. Like, it just gives me the ick.
Yeah. I agree with you. Because, you know, women need to be on there or something.
Right.
Like, that's their rightful place, and it's just like, ugh.
And I don't even hate Lorcan, but, like, this is just exhausting.
Yeah. Agreed. But, like, I will say that their dynamic and relationship is probably one of my favorites.
Him and
Lorcan and Elide, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, it's him and Elide, Nezrin and Sartak, are probably my, like, discounting Rowan and Aelin.
Well, they're set together already in this book. Like, we're not really... Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, anyway, those are my favorites out of all the pairings.
Yeah. I can see that. I like their stories a lot. Like, especially, I love Nezrin's point of view in this, not this book, but in Tower of Dawn. Like, it's my favorite part of Tower of Dawn. And I know that's also because of how I feel about KL. But, like, reading it again this time, it makes me realize how much more I like her as a character and her relationships. So.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So, we go back to Aelin's point of view, and she is actively having a nightmare and is in, like, flames, which is, like, not great when you're on a boat.
Yeah.
To be in flames.
And not in the nightmare she's in flames. She's having the nightmare and is outwardly
physically. Yeah. So Rowan basically, like, says her name, and his voice is a beacon and a summons, and she's been waiting for her whole life.
Ugh.
And you're like,
I feel like they're just dropping so many, like...
We're clearly building up to something here. Like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So he's luckily using his magic to basically stop the fire from burning more than just her clothes, which is like, of course her clothes burns off, but cool. And he tells her she's the master of her power, and he tells her he sees her and he's not afraid. And it makes her think to herself, I am Aelin, Ashriver Galathinius, and I will not be afraid, which has kind of been her motto.
Or catchphrase.
Yeah. She ends up being able to, like, leash her power, but then Rowan is kind of in a panic, and she's like, what the fuck? She's like, I was the one that was just on fire and freaking out, and now I need to take care of you, is how I would see it.
Yeah.
But he's, like, in protection mode, because like, there was a threat to her, and it's gone now, but he's still not over it.
Yeah.
So she basically just, like, gives him a task to get her some water, and then she, like, nips at his jaw, and they both are, like, immediately ready to have sex.
Didn't you know that's how sex works?
Yeah. She kind of is like, what the hell was that? Because he was on the protective, but he says he was afraid that she wasn't herself again, and, like, you can kind of understand that, because a goddess took over her body. Like, you can't really fault him. And he apologizes for his Fae territorial bullshit, but she says, like, he's not human, so she doesn't want him to apologize for that. Like, it's not his fault, it's part of who he is.
Yeah.
And he says he wishes he had more to offer her, which is obviously, like, a theme of how he feels.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more like in terms of goods, like, he wishes he had a title or an army or something.
Yeah.
Something to offer her to help her.
Yes, exactly. Because she just says then that, like, they don't really have time to find an advantageous marriage for her.
Yeah.
Because the war is so close. Like, it would take too long. And she also doesn't need a husband who will tell her what to do or, like, be a coward. And she basically just needs him. And she says they're going to find a way together. And then she tells him that if they live through this war, they're going to learn how to relax. And he's just like, I'll do anything you want me to, but, like, that might be hard. And she then is like, well, what are we going to do if this all ends and we can never relax? And he's just like, I just want to be at your side no matter what happens. And he says that he loves her, and he'd walk through the burning heart of hell itself to find her.
Aww.
Which is sweet. And then he lifts her up against the wall, and they have sex, of course. And he bites her neck, and she bites his shoulder. And she says she will always find a way back to him. And of course, they, like, both come.
Well, is it a romantasy if the woman doesn't?
No. We actually go over to Manon's point of view now, and, like, a magic coursing through the ship wakes her up. And you're like, I wonder what that could be. And she's still in chains, and it makes her think of finding Elide, because she's worried about Elide. So Dorian comes in and asks if she's the one that sent the power out, but she tells him that witches only have magic like that once, and it's called the yielding, and they basically yield their body and soul and everything to the darkness in, like, an ebony wave of power, but then they die, so they don't use it.
So we've talked a little bit about the yielding before.
I think it came up in the last book, because I almost thought that it just came up in this book, and I was like, this is convenient. She's planting it here. But it did come up in a book before. So he asks if, like, the witches are going to use that when they fight them, and she says that the younger covens will, because they want glory, and that's their only way to kind of get it, but, like, the older witches are too arrogant, so they wouldn't. So he's just like, that's sanctioned murder, and she's like, that's war. I don't know what you're expecting.
Yeah.
But she asks if he's killed anyone, and she can tell he, like, goes to say no, but has to stop himself, and she kind of guesses by that, like, he did when he was collared. So she tells him not to forget what they made him do when he has to face them. It's like, it's kind of a nice moment between them. She asks to be let out of the chains, and they get really flirty together, and she starts thinking to herself, like, he could make her beg, and she's never begged with any human man before. But then they kind of go off track a bit, and she asks how many women he's been with, and I'm like, why? And he asks how many men that she's been with, and she says enough to know how to make mortal men like him beg. And he kind of gets close to her and says that she can't handle what he needs, and he'll never beg again. And it's like, kind of an important moment for him because he's, like, done. And you're like, I get his trauma and stuff when he had the collar, but I'm like, before that, he never really begged for anything either. He's a prince.
But, like, I don't really understand. Did we see him beg?
Well, we didn't really see him, but I'm assuming when he was inside the head of, like, with the prince, he was probably begging not to kill Chaol's friends and guards, and he was, like, begging not to...
Right.
And he begged not to kill Sorsha, like...
Yeah, okay.
I'm assuming that's what it's referring to. So he, like, just walks away, and she's just pissed and horny. But then he just immediately comes back. Like, he leaves her cabin and then turns around and comes back. And he tells her not to bother taking him hostage. And she tells him he can only take what she's willing to give. And he says he needs to hear her say yes. So she does. And she then thinks that she's no one anyway, so there's no harm in sleeping with her enemy. And she starts to unbutton her shirt, and he says that he'll do it himself. And he pins her arms with his magic, because he has magic shadow hands. And he kisses her gently, but then he pulls away and says, maybe another night? And I'm like, is it because he can see that she hates herself in this moment? Like, why did he pull away? I don't get it.
I sort of thought it was a power move from the beginning. I didn't think he had any intention of doing it with her at that moment. I think it was part of the game that they're playing. Like, they're being really flirty, and I didn't take it as him seeing something and stopping. I took it as this is just another power play to be like, hey, look, you want it more than I do.
Okay. I can buy that. I just didn't get it. I was like, is it because he can tell that she's like, I'm nobody anyway? Or was it like...
And I mean, I feel like that's a valid point too, is like, if she's thinking that, then, it's probably not the best time for them to have sex.
For sure. And also, she's chained up. Like, I get she's like, yes, but it's still... Yeah.
A little bit of the ick.
Yeah. So we go over to Aedian's point of view now, and he's kind of talking to Lysandra about Dorian and Manon, and I'm like, what is this, a gossip session? Like, and he's like shocked that Dorian wants to fuck her, basically.
Yeah.
But Lysandra's like, maybe he's just looking for someone who's the opposite of the girl that he loved. And Aedian kind of thinks he already liked dangerous girls before this because he liked Aelin. And you're like, true. But Lysandra's like, says that she isn't human, so that's probably a bonus. Yeah. Like, it's not going to be as easy to kill her, so,
Yeah.
Aedian thinks of Manon and Aelin this morning because apparently Aelin backhanded her and then threatened her with fire around her neck for leaving Elide in the forest. So Manon told her what happened with Elide, and she lost her shit.
And, like, fair point. I think leaving her in the middle of the forest was a terrible idea. Like, if you were already out and about, I'm sure you could have taken an extra 30 minutes to drop her off, like, near civilization.
Yeah.
Especially since it's not like she left her with, like, a generous pack of supplies. Like, yeah, she left her a ton of money, but, like, money's not going to do shit. What's she going to do with money in the woods? Yeah. So, like, the poor girl was, like, near starved. And, like, I get that Manon is, like, quote-unquote, doesn't have a heart. But, like, you have common sense. You know that Elide is a human woman. You also know that she has been captive most of her life. Like, she has no experience in the world. And you just drop her off in the woods and expect her to be able to survive. So, like, none of them know at all whether Elide's even alive.
Yeah. It's, and she even thought in the beginning when she looked at her chains, like, she should go look for her. So it's like, you know that it's not the best place to leave her. Like, yeah.
And I'm just trying to remember, like, did she have somewhere pressing to be?
Well, she just wanted to go back so it didn't look like she's the one that exploded the...
But she didn't. They knew it was Caltine.
Yeah.
I'm just...
Well, she's the only one that could have done it. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense. So, Aelin also thinks they're currently 3 days from the marshes, and he's ready to be off this boat. Like, there's too much sexual tension. His father's there, and he's pissed about that. So he actually looks over at his father, who is studying Abraxos, who's just, like, chilling on the deck. And like you said, I think earlier, he's just roaming free because they know he won't leave Manon. Yeah. Which I just love that he's just, like, sunning on the deck all the time.
I really would like to know... I would love a size comparison on how big he is versus a human. Because, like, and then I'm thinking, like, how big is the boat? Like...
True, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is he taking up so much space that it's hard to work? Or, like, is he... Like, and I know he's on the smaller side for a wyvern, but, like... Or a wyvern. I don't know, Buzz. But...
I know.
I know he's on the smaller side, so, like... Is because he's smaller, he's fine? Like, I just would like a size. I don't have spatial awareness at all.
Well, yeah. I too wonder, like, how large is this boat? And I guess it's like a pirate ship, so it's probably pretty big.
But, like, all of the pirate ships, like, all the pirate ships.
All of them.
That I've seen.
In my brain. All of the pirate ships in my brain.
Yeah, not like I've been on very many in real life. But, like, you know, you see them all over, like, the media, like, TV shows and movies and stuff. And, like,
yeah,
they're big, but there's stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you gotta go up the stairs to get to the back where the steering wheel is. Like, doesn't seem like there's very much room back there. Then, like, when you go back down and you're on, like, sort of the main deck, there's, like, rigging everywhere and masts and little places to, like, cargo hold doors and, like, stuff everywhere. And then you go up the other side to, like, the bow of the boat, and there's another mast up there. It just seems like there's not a whole lot of floor space.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering where he's lying.
Clearly is on this boat, because I think during this moment, too, like, Aelin and Rowan are currently practicing. So they're, like, fighting each other. So, like, there's clearly a wide open space here. However, that makes the boat look or be, like, she's made it clear that there is a space for them to spar with each other and multiple people to spar at once. So, like, there has to be a large space here.
Okay.
I kind of just picture maybe he's just, like, perched on the edge of the boat, just, like, sitting there.
Maybe.
But then I'm like, would he tip the boat? Like,
yeah.
No. I it's interesting.
The things that go
But we don't know.
Minds.
We don't know anything. Yeah. The things that we need more information on. Dorian then asks Aelin to let Manon out of the chains and says that she won't do anything. And she asks if he decided that when he went to see her in the middle of the night. And you're like, eee. And Dorian says, like, she likes immortals, so why can't he?
Valid point.
Yeah. But Aelin says that Manon is made to ensnare men, and she will not endanger everyone on the boat just because he has a crush on her, basically. Which is, I think, is also a valid point. But Dorian says, I am king, you know. Because, like, he's really been taking a step back here and doing whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Because she's the one with a plan. So Aedian's the one watching this, and he can see Aelin, like, kind of think about it. And she doesn't want to completely destroy his spirits. So she kind of agrees, but there are conditions. And she says Manon attacked them in the forest after their visit in Oakwald, when she, like, shot an arrow through Rowan.
Yeah.
And Dorian says that, like, they provoked her. And she says, like, she's been killing for 100 years, and she doubts that his pretty face turned her good. And he just says that hers turned Rowan from 3 centuries in, like, Maeve's service. And, like, it's true.
It is true.
I don't know why everyone gets so pissed at it, but, like, Rowan is immediately super pissed, and Gavriel's just like, pick a different argument. This isn't going to go well.
But, like, it is...
Which is kind of funny,
100%
but...
100% valid, though.
Exactly. So he actually apologizes to Rowan. And you're like, okay, I don't think he was wrong, but cool.
But I think it's probably like, I feel like everybody can tell what we're all dancing around.
Yes, and he can especially tell because he thought it already. Yeah. Like Dorian already thought it.
Yeah, so, you know, I feel like it's probably, everyone's probably like, you know, it's true, but, you know, it's
bigger.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah. We go over to Aelin's point of view now, and she just can't believe that Dorian is trying to screw Manon. That's like the main thought in her head, which is funny. But she thinks to herself that she actually yielded because she knows Manon has more to tell them than what she already has, especially about Morath. And she thinks like she's going to use Dorian to get that information. And it's just like, she's so ruthless, and like, I just love it.
Well, she's just like, she's literally always, I don't want to say scheming in a bad way, but like, she's literally always scheming. She's literally always thinking about like 3 moves ahead. Like that whole thing with the sea dragon in like from earlier. Like that was like, she planned that like 3 steps ago. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like, just her brain, just the like, she would be an amazing chess player.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
she would be really good.
And I'm terrible at chess because I can't, my brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Or she'd be like, project too far, and then someone would do something unexpected, and then she'd have to scrap everything.
I guess.
But yeah, no, she has that kind of brain that only so many people have.
Yeah.
So yeah, she thinks then of how she hit Manon earlier, and Rowan healed her knuckles, and she got on her knees to repay him. So that's what she's currently thinking about, and he can tell because obviously everyone can fucking tell because they can smell it.
Can you imagine how weird it is, like, for Gavriel there, like, who's, like, sort of the dad of the group?
He's her uncle.
Yeah.
And, yeah, he's her uncle, and it's, like, his best friend. It's not great. But he basically whispers that he's gonna get on his knees for her later. So now there's even more sexual tension. And she, like, walks into a wall thinking about it, and we're like, Jesus Christ.
I love it.
So they go into Manon's room, and she asks, who is that? And Dorian just looks over and is like, that's Fenris. What do you mean? You've met him before. And she's like, no, it isn't. And they're all just like, what? And Rowan slams Fenris, like, across the room with his magic, and Aelin puts up a wall of fire, and Fenris turns into the Bloodhound. And
dun, dun, dun.
Right? We're like, holy shit.
It was very unexpected.
It was. I was not expecting this. I was going to say, I just kind of love that Manon is the one that figured it out.
Manon. Oh, okay. It bothered... See, the way that you say that you really like that Manon's the one that figured it out, that sort of pisses me off. That, like, all of his friends, people that have known him for, like, hundreds of years, couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, but I think it's, like, it's only been, what, like,
a hot
10 minutes or something? Yeah, like, he didn't say anything earlier. They just walked in, and he moved away from them all because he could scent... They figured he moved away because he could scent Aelin turned on. So he stayed, like, out of range of their smelling kind of thing.
I guess.
But yeah, I get it. But I do kind of like that she's like, who the fuck is that? And they're like, oh, you haven't met? Let me formally introduce you. And then she's like, it's not, though.
It's like, hate to tell you.
And then Aelin looks to Adian, and he unchains Manon. And... the Bloodhound kind of just says, like, they ask about the real Fenris, and she's like, oh, he's fine, he's just on another level, and you're like, why didn't she kill him? Yeah. Like, that would be your first thing. But, anyway, Aelin just guesses that she killed a soldier to hide on the boat, and she plans to take Manon. And Lysandra's in the room and has shifted into a ghost leopard, and the Bloodhound looks at Lysandra, and Aelin kind of thinks that this is what she started as. Like, this Bloodhound started as a shifter, and then they did all of the terrible things like they do to humans to make them Ilkin, and that's what turned her into what she is now. Yeah. So, like, she can see, like, the longing that it has for the shifter, which is just kind of sad, because, like, it's not their fault that they were turned into what they were. Yeah. But, yeah. And then the Bloodhound says, look at all of you in this one room, which is just kind of dumb, because we're like, shouldn't she have already known that they were all together if she's been on the boat as a soldier? Like, wouldn't she have already reported that?
Yeah,
like,
but
I'm like, why?
I think it's more like, look, you guys are literally all in this one singular room. Like, anything could happen. Like, if someone did something to the room, they would all be trapped and they would all die at once. Like, they're not worried about.
But like, if somebody like put a hole in the boat, they'd all drown in the middle of the ocean. Like, I just feel like she could have sent, because her eyes basically go murky, and Aelin's like, oh, she's somewhere else, and she's reporting to Erewhon that they're all here at the moment.
Oh.
But I'm like, if she was on the boat already, she would know that they were all on the boat. So it just is kind of like, I don't know. It seems kind of silly to me. But anyway, of course, that's how it happens. But Aelin throws fire at her, basically to try to stop her. But obviously, she gets her message off. And she says that they should have given her the witch. And now he knows who they're traveling with. So it's not great. She also throws a scrap of leather on the floor and says to Manon that her second screamed when Erewhon broke her. And this is a gift to the last Kraken queen to remember her second bye.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's not great. And she also asks if Manon is the one who branded her as unclean. So, like, there's a lot of details, so it seems like it's the truth.
Yes.
So Manon launches herself at the Bloodhound and starts strangling her, and, like, the Bloodhound is clawing back, and then Dorian uses his invisible hands to hold her hands off, and I'm pretty sure he, like, severs her hands, which...
Yeah.
Bleh. And then Manon goes to kill her, but she says that her second begged, and this is where she asks if Manon is the one that branded her. And Manon is just, like, in such a rage, and, like, kind of at a loss, because she's like, shit, she's actually dead. She, like, really believes it in this moment. And Dorian just snaps the Bloodhound's neck. And immediately Manon is pissed that he took her kill, but then she hears Abraxos roaring, basically up on the deck, so she starts running. So they get up there, and there are winged Ilkin there, and Abraxos and Wyvern Lysandra are already fighting them. So Lysandra's super fast. And there are pirates basically just dying everywhere because they're humans.
Yeah.
And they can't do anything.
Apparently.
Yeah, of course. So we go over to Adian's point of view, and he thinks that the Ilkin smell of rotten meat, but also somewhat human, which is kind of, I guess, what Manon was saying in the other books, like the weird smell that they put off. But it's just interesting. And it means that everybody knows that these things started as human, basically.
Yeah.
He hears Aelin tell Rowan to go to the other ships to help out, and Adian is, like, surprise attacked by another Ilkin, but Gavriel shows up and, like, saves his life.
Aww.
Of course, it's his dad. Even if he doesn't want it to be. We actually go over to Aelin's point of view now. We were literally in Adian's point of view for 1 second. And she beheads a Ilkin who asks where her flames are. And before she can answer another one, Fenris dives into more Ilkin. And he ends up getting, like, the shit clawed out of him. And there's, like, green poison inside of his wounds because they had it on their claws. So she has to, like, push down her fire and try to drag up her healing magic to, like, save his life, or he's gonna die here. And, Aelin basically comes over while all this is happening and tells her that, like, they've done what they can, all the other ones are fine. Like, everybody else is basically fine.
Yeah.
And Ilkin comes over to parley then, and tells her that Fenris is going to die, and there's no use in trying to save him, and it was sent to give her a message. And the message is basically, thank you for confirming in Skull's Bay that you carry what his Dark Master seeks. So he knows that she has a word key now, which is not great. In Rowan's point of view, he went to the other ships, but they're all super quiet, nobody attacked them, and they're just like, what the fuck are you looking for? So he goes back to the boat, and the Ilkin is just, like, taking off as he lands, and Aelin is trying to heal Fenris, and everybody's just kind of, like, watching. They're not really doing much. And Lysandra is like, am I gonna have to deal with this Ilkin? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And, which, like, she's the MVP. She probably would. But Rowan grabs a bow and arrow, and they all make bets on if he can do it, basically including Fenris. And, of course, he makes an impossible shot, which I love. I'm not mad at it.
No.
He's super badass. We go over to Aedian's point of view now, and Gavriel actually injured himself when he saved Aedian, but there was luckily no venom left on the claws, so he's just kind of injured. He's not, like, dying like Fenris is. And Aedian got, like, hit badly in the leg, so his knee is a bit fucky. And then we go to Aelin's point again.
So it's just like, skipping POVs everywhere.
Yeah, and we're in Aedian's point of view for, like, 1 second, and it's all like, my dad helped me, but I hate him. Not really, but you know. But in Aelin's point of view, she's healing Fenris, and she's struggling to get the poison out. So she asks him to tell her how his magic works and, like, how he leaps between places. And he says no one knows where it comes from or how it works, but he can slip between folds in the world. And he can only do it a few times and only for short distances. And he says it's useful on the killing field, but that's pretty much all the magic he has. So it kind of makes me wonder if, like, she's going to learn how to winnow. Like, if he'll be able to teach her just because she has, like, a lot of magic. Like, I wonder if other people can learn from him.
Well, yeah, because I guess in ACOTAR, it is, it is limited to people that have a good amount of power, but, like, you can teach it to others.
Yeah. So it's just interesting, because in Crescent City, it's limited to people that have a certain type of power.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, but anyway, it's just interesting, and I want to see if that goes anywhere, but it doesn't in any of these books. He does say, like, he can shield himself, and others, but he doesn't actually wield an element. Like, obviously she wields fire. So she asks what his shield is made of, and he just shrugs, and Gavriel just says arrogance, and I fucking love it. It's my favorite. So she asks about his past then, and he says he and his brother were sons of nobles, and their mother was a warrior who reported to Maeve, and their father was often away at war. And when they were 30, they went with their mother to Dornell, and they caught Maeve's eye. And basically, we already heard, like, the reason she collected them is because they're twins, and twins are rare. Yeah. So she asks if Maeve knows that he hates being in her service, and he says, yes, that's kind of why she sent him here, because it's kind of like fake freedom. And she says she's sorry that he's bound to her, and he says that, like, this is what they're meant to do. They're meant to protect and serve and cherish, not the mockery that Maeve has made of it. Which is just, like, interesting.
Yeah. It just, like, you sort of do feel really bad for him because, like, what he wants the most in the world is to be part of something that matters, and he can see that this group of people, like, they matter, and he can see that, like, Aelin doesn't treat her cadre, I'm calling it, but, like, doesn't treat her circle of...
her court.
Doesn't treat her court the way that Maeve does, and, like, what he wants is to belong to something like that.
So then Aedian asks Gavriel if the bond fulfills him, and he says that he was noble too, but he was the youngest of 3, so he wouldn't inherit. So he took to soldiering, and he caught Maeve's eye that way. And he says there's no greater honor. So Aelin says that isn't really an answer. And Gavriel says the only time he hated it and wanted to leave was once. And Aelin asks if he loved her that much. Obviously, Aelin's mother. And he says that she was a bright star in centuries of darkness, and he would have followed her to the end of the earth, but she asked him to leave. So, like, it's just so sad. And, like, I get, obviously, why she did, but, like, you know, he loved her a lot. And Aelin asks if he would have tried to break the bond, and he says honor is his code, but if Maeve tried to hurt either of them, so Aelin or his mother, I don't know her name.
I don't know if they tell us ever.
No, they don't mention it in this part at all, but I just realized I don't know it. But if she had have tried to hurt either of them, he would have done everything in his power to get them out. So, like, he's basically saying he would have tried to break the oath, but, like, obviously it's not that easy.
But, like, also, like, if she wanted to hurt them, I'm sorry. Him being sworn to her, there was absolutely nothing in his power that he can do if that's what Maeve wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I guess he could have possibly broken it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not easy to break, but if he was there and she was like, you can't do anything while I torture them, like, he would have done everything he could to try to break it, kind of thing. So basically, Aelin ends up exhausted because she's trying to heal Fenris. And Rowan picks her up and brings her to bed. And Fenris falls asleep. And Aelin kind of watches over him. And Lysandra sits next to him as a ghost leopard, which is sweet. We go to Dorian's point of view now. And I think I forgot to mention, but when the Bloodhound is in Manon's room, she, like, breaks a hole in the side of the boat. And I was like, this sounds like it's bad, but, like, it must be, like, a higher, it's, like, obviously not underwater.
No.
It's higher.
It's an above ground.
Yeah.
An above ground.
Above sea level.
Yeah. She has an ocean view room.
Yes. If this is a cruise ship, which it fucking sounds like it is. She has a balcony room. And now she has a window that she didn't have before. So they patch up the hole basically in her room, and he actually helps heal people as best as he can with, like, the limited knowledge he has of healing. So the next day, Fenris is up and able to basically limp around, and Manon has been healing Abraxos, or, like, not healing, but, like, helping him as best she can.
You know, it's
and he
funny.
thinks that, like,
you said he's like up and around and healing. Immediately in my head, I think, jump around, jump around, jump up, and get down. That was immediately what was playing in my head.
I don't think he can, but I like the enthusiasm.
Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
That's good. Aelin at one point went over to, like, help Abraxos, and Manon, like, was too protective and told her that she'd pull her spine out, and Aelin was like, fine, let him die, I don't care.
Yeah.
He was just like, aye.
It's like, wow, that's not heartless at all.
It's intense. But then Manon goes over to talk to Dorian, and she asks if she has him to thank for her freedom. And he's just like, maybe. And then she asks about his magic. And he says he doesn't know what it is, but it's an extension of himself. And he kind of thinks of them in bed together because, like, if he's thinking of his magic, he's thinking about using his phantom hands. And he tells her that he wouldn't harm her. And she just asks him if he liked killing the Bloodhound. And he says yes. And she asks why he didn't make her suffer. And he says, even with their enemies, there's a line. And she says, then you have your answer. And he's like, I didn't ask a question. And she says, you've had a look in your eyes all night, wondering if you've become a monster like the rest of us. And she says, the next time you kill, remember that line. So, like, kind of I guess confirming that, like, he's
still a good person.
He's less of a monster than everybody else on this boat, including Aelin.
I know.
Which, like,
that sort of...
I'm fine with.
But it sort of bothers me that he thinks they're all monsters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what they've done. Now, like, apart from the Fae, like, you know, they've sort of... we don't know what everything in their past. I'm sure that they had moments of, like, killing people because they were told to kill people. But, like, I feel like Lysandra, Aelin, like, they were put into circumstances, like, who's Lysandra? Like, Lysandra's a monster, really? Who has she killed? A bunch of soldiers and Valg, plus Arobin, who is her rapist. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's a fair comparison.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that we can call her a monster, and I don't think we can really call Aelin a monster. Like, he's been in battle since he was a child. Yeah. He grew up without a childhood. Like, I'm just sad for him at the moment. But yeah, I agree. I don't know. But anyway, he needs that reminder, I guess. So he asks where she stands on that, but she says she's not mortal, and, like, she kills men for sport. Yeah. Like, we like to forget this. And she's like, I'm not a human woman. Like, you can't expect that of me. Which is fair, valid. Yeah. But he says he has no interest in human women because they're too breakable. Like, obviously this is his trauma, which is sad, but, like, it's just sad. He asks her if she knew about the Ilkin, and she says she assumes it's part of whatever's in that mountain. And Aelin just appears out of nowhere and is like, what do you mean in the mountain? She's like, this is the kind of information I was looking for. But Manon says she only heard them scream as they died and were remade. Which is interesting, because, like, we didn't really... Like, we got that they were turned into these creatures, but we didn't really get that they died and, like, were remade until this moment. Yeah. And I'm like, are we sure that's what it was? Like...
Well, it's almost like, was it like a Frankenstein? Or not a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Is it like a Frankenstein situation?
That's what it seems like, yeah. So it's interesting.
Hang on, let me correct myself. A Frankenstein's monster situation. Yes. I don't want to get any of those, like, arguments of Frankenstein was the doctor, not the monster. So, sorry, a Frankenstein's monster situation?
Yeah. I love it. So, oh my god. Yeah. So Aelin asks then if they're scouts or if they're, like, assassins, like, what she thinks they were doing here, but Manon says that she doesn't know. She couldn't really, like, her shadows couldn't get a read on them. And Aelin gets a defeated look, and we're in Dorian's point of view. And he's seeing Aelin get this defeated look, and Manon can also tell that that's what it is. And I'm like, how can you tell? This is ridiculous, but okay. But Manon basically tells her to snap out of it and not to get distracted with minor defeats, because this is war. And if she was her, she'd be concerned with why they sent so few Ilkin here to, like, attack them. Aelin's just annoyed and just tells her to keep her musings to herself and calls her Blackbeak. But Manon says she's not a Blackbeak. Her grandmother actually stripped her of the titles of heir, wingleader, and of her heritage. And she kind of explains, like, her grandmother killed her parents for trying to stop the witch feud, and Manon is actually the last Kraken queen, and she has promised to bring her people home, but now she's with the queen of her enemy, and her 13 are gone, so, like, she's also in a bunch of shit right now, too. Like, things aren't going well. Fenris asks then why Erewhon let Aelin and Dorian live so long, and it's exactly what we talked about. Yes! I don't know if that was last week or something.
We've discussed it. Why?
Exactly. We're like, Fenris asking the real questions.
Thank you, Fenris, for helping us out here.
But Aelin kind of just says, well, he probably thought that she died 10 years ago, and Dorian's father tried to shield him as best he could from everything. So, like, those are the reasons. But Fenris is just like, Maeve knew you were alive, though, so, like, why wouldn't Erewhon have realized? And
Maybe.
Aedion asks...
Did we know that before?
I don't know if we necessarily knew it, but Maeve always knew, like, we kind of knew that Maeve knew that she was Selena from the beginning. Like, she didn't just see her nearby and say, oh, she's alive. Like, she already knew a whole bunch of shit about her life. Mm-hmm. Like, it seemed like someone was following her for Maeve. Because they knew down to, like, her being friends with Nehemia and making a vow. Like, you know what I mean?
But, like, doesn't she have, like... Okay, so... I don't know if you're going to remember way back in Heir of Fire when Aelin goes, at the very end of the book, Aelin goes to, like, rescue Rowan, I guess. And and Maeve has, like, an owl shifter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that not, like, somebody who can... Like, do we know much about that owl?
Not right now. We find out next book.
Delete all that. Well, because in my thought was, like, maybe she has someone, like, that can, like, a seer or something.
She clearly has some abilities herself, but I don't know what. So, Aedion asks if Maeve would have told Erewhon, but Fenris says, like, she doesn't share power, so she never would have. And, like, we don't actually know if they've ever had any conversation, Maeve and Erewhon, to this point. And Aedion then says that anyone can be bought for a price, and Fenris says nameless is Maeve's price. And Aelin just completely stills and repeats nameless is my price. And she asks Manon if her kind can see the future, and Manon says, like, some blue bloods claim to, and for their ancients, the past, present, and future kind of, like, can blend together. And Aelin just walks away, and Rowan just follows her. And Fenris is just like, what the fuck just happened? And we're all like, thank you, Fenris, for asking the questions we all want to know. Dorian then says that they saw Baba Yellowlegs when she was in Rifthold. And Manon says, yeah, she was definitely an oracle, and she would have told Aelin, like, about her future, but it would have been in veiled terms so that it would drive her mad when she figured it out. So, like, we're kind of getting that Aelin has figured something out here.
Do we remember what the prediction was? Do you remember what was it? It was in Crown of Midnight?
Yeah, it was just like, that's what they said, nameless is my price. But then she's putting together here that she's nameless because she's the bastard born. Like, she had the bastard born mark on her forehead.
Right. So I found a screenshot of the page. So Selena is offering her money, and the woman says nameless. She says name. So Selena says name your price, and the woman says nameless is my price, but gold will do for now. So,
but like, it came up before with the word keys and the word gates.
Yeah,
that
it's come up quite a bit.
Yeah, so she's putting together some things, but she's not going to tell us what they are. So we go over to Rowan's point of view now, and Aelin just walked straight into the bathroom, and she starts puking. And she tells him she doesn't feel well, and he's, like, debating breaking the door down, but she opens the door, and she asks to see Lysandra. So he puts what he thinks 2 and 2 together now, and he's like, oh shit, she's pregnant. So...
And I was fully convinced that this is what...
Same.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I thought the same. And he can't send her over the vomit, so he just goes to get Lysandra for her, and he flies up into the sky to, like, settle himself, because he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But up there he sees that Eelway is on fire. So we actually go over to Elide's point of view now, and we leave that disaster. But Elide hasn't spoken to Lorcan in 3 days, and she actually has to when her cycle comes back. And she says that she needs supplies.
Girl supplies.
Yeah. Gallivant. Yeah. And he says, like, she barely bled last time, but she says her body must feel safe enough to act normal now, which is just kind of sad.
It is.
But mostly I think it's just that, like, she hasn't been eating enough at all. She's, like, underfed, is what I think, because it was the same thing with Aelin. She didn't get hers until she started beefing up. Yeah. And, like, I appreciate that Sarah J Maas is trying to, like, correlate, like, not being super thin.
Yes.
With being healthy. Like, she's, like, healthy bodies and that kind of stuff. You know. So we actually go over to Lorcan's point of view now, and they are in the town, and he thinks of how he spent the last 3 days making plans for Aelin, and we're like, fuck off.
But can I just say, too, like, do you not find it slightly weird that he's, like, sniffing her out and be like, last time you barely bled at all? It's just sort of like, okay, dude, calm down, like, I don't need you knowing all the ins and outs of my cycle, please.
I know, but I think it's just, like, in their nature.
I guess.
And I just hate it. I hate it.
And, like,
I would not be okay with it.
Is it an attempt to be like, look how in tune he is with her body? Like, is that what it's trying to be? I
hope not.
Like, look how much he notices about her.
I don't want it to be, I'll say that. So he ends up leaving Elide to barter for, like, supplies, girl supplies, and clothes. And he goes to buy food, but then the merchant throws in pears for the lovely lady, and he just starts thinking about it, and he's bringing his stuff back to the boat, and he's like, wait, how does he know about the lovely lady? And he ends up scanning the town, village place with his magic, and his magic screams back at him that something's not right and to hurry, and, like, rats are rushing past him, so he knows there's something going on. We go over to Elide's point of view, and the innkeeper insists that she tries the clothes on before she buys them, and ends up locking her in a room that she was going to change in. And we're like, this was dumb.
Yeah, why would you do that? I would have said, no thank you, goodbye.
Yeah. So she ends up running into, like, a rotten meat-smelling humanoid thing, which is obviously an Elkin. And then Vernon, like, lights a candle and is super dramatic.
Ta-da!
But Vernon... Yeah, basically. But Vernon tells her that her companion already left, and she says that he's not her companion, he's her husband, and that Vernon has no right to her anymore because she has a husband now, so he, like, the husband now has the right to her.
God.
Which, like, we hate, but, like, obviously.
That's how this world works.
Yeah. But he just laughs, and he's like, so you're saying Lorcan Salvatore, Maeve's second, is your husband? And she's like, yes. And we're like, is this some foreshadowing? So Vernon just says that they're leaving now, and she knows that, like, she needs to make her stand here. She can't let him take her to a secondary location.
How does she know that? She didn't take Aelin's defense class.
I know. I don't know how. But she knows she can't go back to Morath, and, like, so she's like, she needs to, like, take her last stand here. But they pull her outside, and she thinks that, like, Lorcan left, and she only brought him danger, and she gave him all that he had wanted from her, so that's why he left. And you're like, sure. So
she actually thinks that, like, he did abandon her.
She does believe it, yes.
I feel so bad. I'm like,
I do feel bad for her too, but I'm also like, bitch, he ain't leaving you.
They haven't spoken in days.
I know, I guess. Vernon then asks what she's going to do at Morath now that Manon Blackbeak is dead, and he says that her grandmother gutted her and threw her off the side of the mountain. And you're like, shit. And you're like, it's true. He's telling the truth, but he's leaving out some key details
that she survived.
Yeah. And, like, I guess he doesn't know for sure, but, like, And he tells her that Erewhon is going to be interested in what she took from Kaltain. And she does have it on her now, and it obviously makes her think of it, but a voice tells her not to use or acknowledge it. But she's completely outnumbered, and she starts think, like, she has one shot, and the voice in her head tells her no, but she refuses to go back. So as the reader, like, you're kind of two minds. You're like, is she going to use the key now? Like, is that what's going to happen? Which would be interesting, because we're assuming there's a goddess is the voice telling her not to use it. And we're like, why doesn't the goddess just take over and save her ass?
But also, too, like, what I don't understand is, so Elide has this, like, I'm calling it, like, a guardian angel, like, somebody who has been protecting her and sort of telling her the right way to go her whole life.
Yeah.
But, like, our interaction with Deanna sort of proved that the gods and goddesses suck.
Yeah, so it's like...
So, like, why is this goddess, like, I feel I can't trust this angel on her shoulder anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't trust, like, why is this, like, voice or this feeling, why is it pushing her one way or the other?
Yeah, I don't really get it, because, like, for some of them I can get why they're trying to push them to do certain things, like, but I guess they want her not to get the key back, maybe. I don't really know. But anyway, the goddess is telling her no, and we're like, she's going to use the key. But then Vernon brings her towards an iron box that they obviously plan to shove her in. And I'm like, but she doesn't have magic. This seems like overkill. But okay.
Yeah, it's actually very scary, because they've literally, like, it's like a coffin with, like, ropes on it, and the Ilkin are gonna fly her back to Morath in this, like, iron coffin. It is terrifying.
Yeah. Don't love it.
I also don't love it. And I can, like, I feel for her. She's deaf.
Oh my god. And she thinks Lorcan's gone. Like, I completely do too. So she thinks, like, she's gonna die here. And the Ilkin throws her towards the box, but she, like, twists and ends up slamming into the side face first. And she, like, breaks her nose, but then she grabs Vernon's knife and drives it home. And we're like, oh shit, she's gonna just kill herself, because that's what she said. She said that she'd kill herself before she had to go back. We go to Lorcan's point of view now, and he, like, is watching this whole situation and has his shot ready to, like, kill the Ilkin. But he has to throw his hatchet at her wrist to get the knife away, because he's like, she's gonna fucking kill herself. This isn't part of the plan. Yeah.
Well, I guess she doesn't know he's there. So, like, she's gonna do what she's planning on doing. She refuses to go back. But obviously, like, he's like, shit, I don't want her to die.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So he ends up then throwing knives into the wings of two of the Ilkin to get them down, and he puts a sword through an Ilkin's face, and Elide runs towards the alley, and he's like, good, she's getting away, but then she grabs a hatchet and, like, throws it into one of the Ilkin's back, and he's like, oh shit, she's not running, she's fighting. Yeah. And then she ends up chopping off the Ilkin's head, and there's only one left, but it runs and grabs Vernon, and they just start flying away, and Elide gets the hatchet back, and she throws it again, but she just misses it. So, Vernon gets away, basically. One of the Ilkin are still alive, but are, like, pinned down with the knives in its wings. And she tells it, and it's, like, kind of an empowering moment, I guess. But she tells it that she wants Erewhon to know that she will carve Manon's name into him, and, like, she'll pay him back for this. But then she says you only need one to deliver a message, and, like, the Ilkin's already gone, so she just beheads this one.
Very a la Mulan.
Yeah, but I'm also like, what was the point of that whole speech if he's never going to hear it? But, like, I get, it's more empowering for her, and I do appreciate that, like, she's bloodthirsty and getting into her own. I'm also like, how is she so good at fighting when she's never fought in her life?
Yeah.
But okay. So Lorcan starts grabbing up all of his weapons, and he debates killing the innkeeper for, like, selling them out, but Elide just says, enough death. So he just, like, picks her up in his little arms, well, his big meaty arms and her little body, and he brings her back to the boat, and she just says that Vernon said he left, and he says, you believed him. And he's like, you were actually going to kill yourself, weren't you? And he looks over at her, and she's just, like, crying, sitting on the boat, and he goes and sits next to her. And he asks her who Manon is, and she tells him, like, she's the wing leader, and he just assumes, like, she's the one that saved her. And he asks her who Kaltain is, and she says it's Erewhon's mistress/slave, and he put the stone that she carries in her arm and made her a ghost of herself. But she's the one that bought them time to run and destroyed a lot of Morath, and saved her, all in all. So she actually pulls out the stone, and he can smell a female scent that is, like, cold and sad on it, which is obviously Kaltain's, which just makes me sad. And he can, like, scent the, like, Valg presence bullshit underneath it. So Elide continues, and she said, like, Kaltain said to give it to Celaena, not Aelin, because Celaena gave her a warm cloak in a cold dungeon, and she wants to repay her. But what kind of gift is this? So she, like, opens up the, like, cloak that it's hidden in, and says her bones tell her not to touch it, and a voice in her head tells her not to even think of it. And his magic tells him that it is wrong, too. So, like, it's not great. He just tells her to put it away, and he says that he'll set her nose and wrist and tell her what he knows. And he tells her he made a promise to protect her, and he will keep it, and he will always find her.
Aww.
Which is sweet. So we go over to Elide's point of view now, and he basically told her about the keys and gates, and how Aelin has one, and I guess she'll soon have two if she gets this one. And Elide just kind of, like, prays that Manon is still alive, and she refuses to believe that she isn't alive until she has actual proof, which is fair. Because she's like, he lied about Lorcan leaving me, so maybe he lied about that. And you're like, he did.
Yes,
both.
Yes, he did.
So she tells Lorcan that she killed those things and she doesn't regret it. And she kisses his cheek and says she'll always find him too. And then she, like, basically goes to bed. And she wakes up to clean strips of his shirt by her bed the next morning for her cycle.
But, like, so they just have to wad up fabric and shove down there.
Yeah, but it's the same as, like, olden days when they used rags.
That's why, for all you historian buffs out there, that's why the slang term for your period is being on the rags.
Yes,
because you used to use rags in olden day times.
Yeah. I'm happy with what we have now. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. I am very content.
Even though apparently there's, like, metals and shit in tampons and stuff.
Metals?
Yeah, didn't you see that study? There's, like, arsenic in them or some bullshit. Yeah. But apparently it's just the same levels are in, like, cotton that it's made out of, but still, we're like, is that doing anything to human bodies? We don't know.
That's the whole...
Need more studies.
That's the whole toxic shock syndrome thing, maybe.
Well, exactly. That's, yeah. Anyway. We actually go over to Aelin's point of view now, and the fires are, like, completely killing her spirit. She's putting out what she can, but they can't stop the boat. Like, they're on a mission. And Rowan is, like, flying into shore to ask who started the fires, and he just, like, hears everybody saying that darkness swept over, and then flaming arrows lit the place on fire. And there's no sign of Maeve or Erewhon around, so, like, they don't know who's doing it. Aelin and crew can't figure out who did it. But then Rowan hears a rumor that Aelin is the one burning Eelway for not aiding years ago. And obviously that breaks Aelin's heart.
So obviously it's either Maeve or Erewhon burning these villages, but they're using fire to insinuate that it's Aelin.
Exactly.
And, like, starting
and, like,
rumors.
I think we can even kind of assume further which one it is, because who had her armadas ready to sail to Eelway? Yeah. But, you know. We do get, thankfully, that she is not pregnant, but we also get that she had a conversation with Rowan that she may struggle to conceive. So even if the timing is terrible, she isn't going to, like, take a contraceptive because she wants to, like, have an heir for her kingdom. So she's not going to stop herself from getting pregnant.
Why does she think it'll be difficult to conceive? Is it just because she's part Fae and the Fae have trouble?
Yeah, basically. She doesn't tell him or us why she threw up, though. And that's all we get on that. And then they get to the stone marshes. We jump over to Manon's point of view really quickly. And she's going with them into the ruins, the stone marshes. And she thinks it's like a day and a half inland, and then basically a day and a half back out. And Aelin told her that Abraxos has to go. So Manon has to go over, and she tells him to lay low and to come back in 4 days. And it's sad. And she's actually, like, so sweet to him, and I love it. She's like, they've been through so much together, and it's just like, oh.
Well, you just feel for him because, like, that's his person. Like, he doesn't have anybody else. And, like, he loves her so much, and they're like, you can't be here.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, why don't you just take him with you? Why can't he go into to the marshes?
I mean,
like, why can't he go into the
ruins? We know
ruins?
why.
But I want him to.
But
I know. I don't want him to, too. He needs to do what he does. But anyway, she actually thinks that she hates Aelin for making him go because, like, they've not been separated. They've been through so much. Like, she's pissed. She sees the others getting ready, and it makes her remember the 13. And she thinks, like, they can't be dead. And she takes off Rhiannon's cloak. And she tears a strip off and ties it around her braid to, like, remember. And then she just, like, throws it into the sea. And she looks at it, and it looks like a pool of blood. And Aelin just says that you never stop seeing their faces as it, like, floats away. A beautiful moment.
But at the same time, I feel like Aelin can't really lecture Manon on death. You know?
I don't think she's lecturing her.
But well, not lecturing, but, like, pointing something out that I'm sure Manon already knows.
But she doesn't, because she doesn't have feelings. Like, I think Aelin can say shit about feelings because Manon's like, I don't have those.
I guess.
And, like, we're trying to imply now that she's, like, getting some feelings. She's growing feelings.
I guess.
But yeah.
All right, fine.
Oh, shit. So yeah, that's it for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread, and coffee.coread on TikTok.
Okay, so next week we are back to Tower of Dawn. So we are going to be reading Tower of Dawn chapters 36 to 43 and Empire of Storms chapters 52 to 59. So, make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on that next page.